can't even combo on them. So they're just rocks. I'm hitting rocks. They could have fixed or added anything else. Yet the one thing DMC 3 really needed was more boss.
Thank God mods fixed that. Now we have access to all weapons at once when it was never an issue in the first place.
Guys, have I ever mentioned that, suicide is my best friend?
I'm absolutely crazy about it.
Alright, let's talk about the only reason you clicked on this video, the title. The exact definition of the word is rated or valued too highly. And notice, I'm not saying the game is bad, I'm saying it's overrated. Saying the game is bad or saying that it's overrated are two completely different statements. It's not like fire and ice, it's more like slitting your wrist. One's for effectiveness, the other one's for attention. Following up with the theme of duality, there are two things that make my video stand out from all the rest of the DMC3 videos you've seen before. First, this video is trying to push the envelope of the idea that DMC3 has quite a few issues, such as bosses, enemies, camera, backtracking, and that's not even mentioning the issues I have with the rebooted Dante. Second one is something you sharp eyes may have noticed already. Near all the footage of this video was captured on the Nintendo Switch version of DMC3. This version, exclusive to the Switch, gives the player the ability to switch all weapons, all styles, all at once. If I'm going to criticize the game, I want to make sure it's at its best. And no, I'm not a broke boy. I'm going to become a style player for this game. I already have more than 70 hours on the original version and more than 60 hours in the Freestyle version. And I plan to understand and get much better at the game over time. But after all that, if you still don't believe I'm coming from an honest place, then if you're going to clown on me, do better than L-Take. Make it funny. That's my only requirement for leaving a hate comment, and I guarantee you if you do that, I will heart it. If you make me laugh, of course. Oh, I haven't introduced myself to the new people yet. Hi, my name is Splinter. You can call me a variety of things like Ginger, Daddy, or even a homophobic slur. I also live stream now and again, so come and say hi. And you, yes you, have you ever wanted to be in a combo mat but don't understand where to submit or where to get started? Well, that ties into the big announcement for this channel. While this channel will still be for big analysis videos, it's now also for great combo mats. In my server, you will find a text channel called Combo Submissions. There you can submit and get feedback for your combos that will be in a made channel video. It doesn't have to be DMC Devil May Cry combos, and it doesn't even have to be DMC related. I want to push this channel in a new direction. So feel free to join today. Oh, and of course, check out my other channels if you want smaller bite-sized content because your brain rot can't handle long videos. Then check out my Talking with James channel where I make smaller videos on a variety of content. Last thing to mention is that I want to improve myself, learn, and create real art. And this is what I call my imminence in shadow art. Okay, that's kind of a lame way of saying I'm getting a life.
You could, really go outside more.
Alright, shut the fuck. Anyway, I plan to focus on more audio stories and music. Second to last thing to mention is that my cloner box and my other hard drive decided to explode. It didn't explode, I'm just making the story more interesting. And my old computer is older than the Black Panthers movement. So I'm recording via a new computer and OBS. So if there's some lag in the frames, you know why. However, I did speed up some of the footage every now and again. That way isn't a problem. But if it really bothers you because you're into 8K, 120 frames, and big booty cheeks, there is now a custom playback on YouTube. So if you want, you can always put in at 1.1 speed or 1.2 speed. Again, you'll barely notice it. And last of all, if you enjoy the game, cool. So do I in some ways. Don't let some loser on the internet opinion bother you. You can just have a different opinion than me, and that's awesome. What I want to do with this video is to open your eyes to some of the issues that are noticeable but never talked about. It's a lot like this picture. Everything in DMC3 is absolute peak, aside from most of the enemies. Don't forget 50% of the bosses as well, but still peak. I thought everything was peak. This game is good, but also overrated. Great job, you just made it through the first section. Good on you. Hopefully one of many. This is where the ADHD editing goes away, because that was the only thing to keep the zoomers long enough to count the video as a view. Now that we've made it this far, and you're new, or you're pretty open-minded, so thank you. Even if you don't like the video, it's cool that you gave me the time of day for a loser like me. Alright, let's talk about what this section is actually called. I disagree with the community of DMC on many different things. I've mentioned before that I'm a hardcore defender of the reboot, and I also have a complicated relationship with 4 and 5. My relationship with 3 is similar with 5. Now, disagree with me all you want, that's okay, but I think we can all agree that people tend to say that 3 is the best, or at least the second best, and today I want to take that to the test, and show you how wrong that is. Because this isn't the first time the DMC community has gotten something wrong about the series, in my view. Ho ho, far from it. So I'll do this in 2 ways. In this video, we'll be looking over DMC3 Freestyle and the original from the perspective of the piece of their own art. Solely looking at them from that lens. And I might, keyword being might, make a second video solely responding to the DMC3 bad takes. However, I might break this rule. Wait, why am I apologizing? I made this video. Look, I'll break it down a bit to make a broader point about the game or games. Alright, since you've sat through 2 sections of straight yapping, let's get to the good part. And every time you finish this section, you'll hear this sound. It's always platinum because that's how much I love you. And no, I'm not going to be talking about the Netflix anime because most of this video was worked on before it came out. So I swear to God, if I see a single comment pop up in my notification feed that says, actually the Netflix, this is Splinter3303, and I hope you enjoy this video. It's a little hard knowing how to start this section, but I have an idea. The community have issues with how Dante is portrayed. They believe that if it isn't the exact backstory or similar to his personality, then that simply isn't Dante. Dante is a character you need to get right. Wait a second, ending Splinter. You've been playing the wrong footage. Much better. If DMC Devil May Cry is the Western reboot, then DMC3 is the Japanese reboot. DMC3 fundamentally changed how we look at Dante, so that part you may think may need some convincing. Well, alright, let's start off with one of the biggest red flags. My section is called Pizza Man Not Dante, referring to the term Wacky Wahoo Pizza Man, that Dante is called from time to time. But this term almost entirely came from DMC3. DMC1 we see the pizza, but he didn't eat it on screen or even mention it. DMC2 didn't have it at all, and it's only in DMC3 where we get a long scene of pizza being involved with the character. So let's also cover the wahoo part of the term. DMC1 Dante does have a fun personality, but there is strings attached. One Dante is cocky, but not wild. Dark, but not an asshole. DMC1 had fun retorts, but was never going to ride a rocket. That doesn't make sense. He also wouldn't rudely make fun of somebody else as their loved ones is lying there, dead on the ground. Look, DMC3 Dante is simply a jerk. He also starts shooting somebody's feet because they, quote unquote, it bugs the crap out of me when someone talks more than I do. Oh, I didn't know this version had a fragile sense of ego. I'm sorry guys, Dante talked to Cerberus like a dog, so therefore he's a good character. Even Dante versus Vergil doesn't really make much sense. Dante doesn't try to fight him for a better world or whatever, he just doesn't like him. In fact, that's the only reason we're given for them to start fighting in the first place. The game literally doesn't bother to really explain other than that reason. The only thing going for this version of the character arc, well, it's a very light one at that. In DMC Devil May Cry, the character arc of Dante is extremely clear. There is a point where the story just straight up tells you, hey, this is a part of Dante's arc. Pay attention. In DMC3, there really isn't such a thing. Dante's arc only happens when Lady and Dante fight towards the end of the game. And it's only then where Dante goes, wait a second, family is cool, I guess. I'm not trying to knock on the scene in a fun manner, but Lady really is the only reason Dante ends up caring, yet most of Lady and Dante's interactions go like this.
If you're asking for a date, forget it. Because I make it a point not to go out with women who shoot me in the head. Here I am trying to help you, and you show your thanks by shooting me?
Date a demon? I'm not that desperate. Besides, I really don't care for guys who stink like blood.
Sorry, but this is no place for a little girl. So beat it.
Shut up! That That man. Did you kill him?
So what if I did? Well, we have something in common. I have a dysfunctional family too.
And what would you know about family? You're a demon. A demon like you wouldn't understand.
But in DMC Devil May Cry, it makes sense because Kat and Dante, actually like each other. That's why DMC Devil May Cry works so well, while Dante's arc in 3 doesn't feel as fully realized as it could be. There'd be more time to explore this if DMC 3 wasn't so obsessed with action scenes. Nearly every cutscene is an action scene of some kind. But there is really a time to breathe for a moment for the characters to interact and grow. Look, I don't hate this version of Dante. In some ways I like him. I just find the hypocrisy of DMC Devil May Cry Dante versus DMC 3's Dante. He's, again, not a bad character, just not Dante. The real problem with him is every Dante after 3 feels like it needs to be that version of Dante again, even if it doesn't make sense like in DMC 4. In DMC 4, Dante acts exactly like how he acts in 3, which doesn't make any sense whatsoever. This is after 1 and 2, both games that Dante was very grounded as a character, but 4 throws this all out of the window. Funny enough, the original anime for DMC is actually the most faithful Dante we've ever gotten past 1 and 2. He quips, but he can clearly tell that he's a more realistic Dante that we get. Yet 4 just doesn't care. Another thing 4 doesn't understand is the original rule. I hear so many people bring up the point that, well, Dante doesn't drink, or smoke, or swear, libtard, when talking about DMC Devil May Cry's Dante. So, no need to be rude, but yes, a lot of people bring up this point. So let's go down the list. Drinking. Actually, Dante does drink. In DMC 4, we see that Dante has his own minibar to himself, with empty bottles laying around, so he does drink. Not only that, but a lot of Hideki Kamiya's characters are drinkers of some kind, so it's not out of the imagination to think that Dante drinks. Smoking. This is also a strange one because yes, Dante doesn't smoke. But neither does DMC Devil May Cry Dante. Sure, that teaser shows this, but in the actual game, Dante never picks up a cigarette. Swearing. And Dante does swear. In fact, in the anime, Dante literally calls somebody a pudgy fuck. So let's recap. Dante does drink because we see it in 4. Dante does not smoke in any of the games. And Dante does swear, just not often. So when people say Dante doesn't drink or smoke or swear, please show them reality. There's something I want to mention when it comes to how Dante looks in this game versus how he looks in DMC 1. Thanks to Hexen for the feedback for this section. Take a look at Dante in DMC 1. Formally dressed, he's got a tight jacket with a vest. It shows how classy he is. Even the color scheme plays into this, using dark red and contrasting it with the black shirt. It's a great design. But in 3, look at the difference. The formalness is completely gone. Now we have a teen that you'd see in the 80s in a motorcycle gang. The cleanliness of the jacket is now dirty and completely unorganized with so many zippers. And the color scheme is now a loud red contrasting off of Dante's body. So, that body. Sorry, my bad. If the red jacket or the white hair was removed, this would seem like anyone but Dante. I've also heard a lot of points where people believe that Ruben made Dante, that he is the definitive Dante, which just isn't true. Yes, Ruben was key to DMC 3, the motion capture and the outsourcing of English actors was up to him. However, Ruben isn't the only Dante. There's Drew, there's Matthew, Tim, and now Johnny from the upcoming Netflix series. Now that Ruben has kind of gone off the deep end recently, I think it's more than okay for another Dante to step up. According to Ruben, 3 was supposed to be a massive shift in the series before DMC 2 came out. In fact, 3 was in development before DMC 2 even released. I get it. Ruben, most of the time, plays a good Dante. But he isn't the only one. I feel the reason why so many may think that he's the definitive Dante because of DMC 3, but DMC 3 isn't DMC 1. It didn't create the series. The biggest thing I want to talk about is the facade of Dante. Quick detour, but I swear to God it's important. I made a tweet saying the damage that 3 Dante did to Dante was insane. I got quite a bit of pushback. Most of it was just this picture, but I want to pinpoint my issues with their responses. Some said, what about DMC 2? DMC 2 can be explained and worked with. DMC 2 Dante is in grief because of Vergil's painful death. And as in the anime shows, you can work with that idea. There are also the, DMC3 Dante became popular, or he's now iconic. Bro, what? DMC3 would be nothing without DMC1. Plus, popular doesn't mean good. There's more to a character than being famous. People also mention why they love him, and it just comes down to the fact that they really, really like his antics. Look, antics in and of itself isn't a problem. It's the facade that's an issue. Dante in 1, then in the OG anime, and in some ways too, had a facade. The banter, the witty one-liners, that isn't the true Dante. Dante is just like the rest of us. He can enjoy himself, but at the end of the day, sometimes he's alone, and Dante is alone a lot. At some point, the facade drops, and that's who Dante is. But in 3, 4, and in some ways 5, the facade is all he becomes. It's not just the fact that there is an overcommitment to action scenes, it's the fact that it's always about how crazy Dante can get, and it seems like the idea of how the character actually is thrown out. And I'm not saying that DMC3 Dante doesn't have his moments that actually do stuff with his character, but it certainly is an afterthought. So Dante, in this game, doesn't look like Dante, doesn't act like Dante, and adds things that are not a part of Dante originally. So is this really Dante? Okay guys, hear me out here. If you guys call DMC Devil May Cry Dante, I think it's only fair we call DMC3's Dante, as in ain't Dante. Please, let that be a slur. Please, guys, we can make it happen. Anyway, in seriousness, thank you, Blast, for some of the help that I've gotten on this part of this section. After all of this, what is the takeaway from all of this? I think it's okay to like DMC3 Dante. It's not wrong to like him. Hell, I like him more than 4 and 5 because he actually has a character arc. Anyway, just understand that every Dante does their own thing. And I know I use DMC Devil May Cry Dante a lot, but it was to prove a point. Dante is made up of many different things, and it's important to understand that. But, guys, Dante is way too white. Seriously, bro, had the Michael Jackson treatment, and he wasn't this white before. Anyway, ran over. Let's get into more of the gameplay. Intro. Okay, so if all goes well, the DMC3 Remake, 3 Vergil, and my response should all go in the second channel. However, this section will be one of my earlier sections in the video, meaning some of you might be very put off by my last section, so this section, I think we can all agree that the level design in this game is awful. By the end of this section, you will understand why. Level 1 and 2 is what most of the levels should be. Pure combat. This is good because it puts the player in the gameplay right away. Level 3, a little bit annoying. This comes down to the ledges that the enigmas can get on the high ground, plus it's really far away, so this fight is mostly a pain in the ass without Quicksilver. Other than that, a short level. Level 4, things start to go more wrong in this level. One of the mandatory fights is in this room, and just like the vantage points from level 3, it's awful. It's big, which is okay, but the higher points are really annoying. It's angled in the way where you're on screen enough for them to hit you, yet too far away to get to them. The next fight has a different issue. The enemies spawn in this little doorway, which is extremely small, but also has an opening space right over here, which makes me question why they have the enemies spawn in such a weird position. The next fight is the Chamber of Sins. Has a problem with the camera. It's mostly a big area, yet the camera is far too close to Dante. That way the player just can't see what's around him. Level 5 is where you realize, hey, wait a second, I've been here before. This level reuses a lot of the areas you've already fought in. Why? That means you have to go back to the living statue room and deal with this awful terrain. But for your final fight before the boss, you have to take this elevator. So you might be thinking, wow, me love elevator because I get to change of scenery while fight. But you're mostly wrong, because whoever built this elevator did a bad job. Too many demons, and it breaks. Level 6 is yet another strange mission, one that I have mixed feelings on. You see, this mission needs you to pick up 3 MacGuffins. You only need 2 MacGuffins to pass, but you can use 3 to get a weapon early. So, how do you get these MacGuffins? Well, you see, in the next room there are 3 areas having each a MacGuffin. How you get them is weird. In order to get one of them, you need to go through a course, one of them you need to go through a puzzle, and one of them is combat. So why am I mixed on it? Well, after getting the MacGuffins, this level just kinda ends, meaning that you don't even have to touch combat through the whole level. Sure, the choice is cool, but DMC has always been about combat, so skipping is cute, but not particularly great. That too, and platforming in this section, and the puzzle, bit too easy, but not the worst, just weird. Level 7. You ready for the most confusing mission? For the first area, you need to just go straight down, because if you go up, you're not supposed to go there yet, so you have to actually go down. Once you go down, you need to collect something, and then once you collect something, you go into this little room, right? This little narrow room with all the chess pieces, right? And then once you get into the chess pieces, you have to do this fight, and then you have to go over here. Then you have to take the elevator, and the elevator goes all the way down to the bottom level, which you then have to unlock using like some fires protecting you or whatever, but the thing that you got earlier... Yeah, this is the start of me losing my sanity, because from here on out, we're going to get some more missions like this. You go back and forth and put the thing in the thing. It's so bad. I doubt the player enjoys this when it's really just stretches the game out for no reason. If you want to backtrack in your game, that's okay, but most of the time it needs to be optional. If the player wants to fight again, then give them what they want. If the player doesn't want to fight in the same spot or go to the same place over and over again, respect that as well. Backtracking isn't bad all the time, but DMC3 does way too much of it. Level 8, a renewed fear. Yeah, that's right, I'm calling it by its title, which just like when your mother calls your full name, you're in trouble. This is a filler mission through and through. Story-wise, this is also pointless. Sadly, this is one of the few times where DMC3 actually tries to make the game look interesting from an art style perspective. The insides of this large creature is okay, but nothing pops out. Sure, it's unique, but not actually something cool to look at. This flesh design mostly reminds me of DMC5's later level designs. Then we have the new enemy type that you fight over and over again. And what did they add? They add the exact same thing as the basic enemy type, but now you can't air combo on them for some reason. As level, as boss as well. Level 9. This one isn't much of a bad level for more experienced players, but for first time players are going to get lost. It's hard sometimes to tell what door you need to go through. I actually like most of the level design, wide spaces, and the camera doesn't run into that many issues. However, fuck this room. I think I'll play one video why this little area sucks so much ass. Your Honor, I rest my case. Level 10, this entire level is nearly everything you've seen before. Do you see what I mean about the backtracking now? Level 11, this one's also pretty annoying. The saw blade room I'll come back to at a different time. However, the biggest issue with this level is one room. Not only do you have to do the most brain-dead puzzle imaginable, the room isn't great for combat. You might say, or you might be thinking, Splinter, you stupid ginger, this room is big, perfect for fights. And I'll ignore that insult, but yes, that is good. It has lots of space. But the pillars tend to mess up the camera frequently. The last note I want to leave on is that the elevator needs to be bigger. Cool idea, just needs to be bigger. Level 12. Okay, I admit it. This is a good level for once. The twist is that you are stuck in DT and you are slowly losing health over the course of time. In order to get health back, you need to kill enemies. This is the one time where backtracking is a good thing, because, my fellow followers in Allah, when you're racing against the clock, knowing where exactly you need to go is extremely good to make this work. Again, one time. I'm giving you this pass one time, like how I hand out the G-word pass. It's very rare. Level 13 is good-ish, but it comes with a catch. First off, you get the introduction to the chess enemy types, and I know they've been introduced before, but this is where you get the other types. And these enemies suck nipples, man. But that's for my enemy design section. But yeah, they're not good. Then we have another puzzle. Wow, what an amazing puzzle. DMC3 back with the puzzles being absolutely pointless. The only thing that I really like in this level is the Vergil fight. Level 14, are you guys ready to backtrack through the same places you've been before? Well, fuck you, ending Splinter. Too bad. So that is a problem, but whatever this is worse. I have played this game a lot, like I've told you in the intro, but I still do not know, for the love of God, where to go in this god-awful maze. I always get confused. The mini cutscene confused me even more. Terrible level. Level 15. Backtracking the level, guys. Aren't you excited? Aren't you? Yeah, this level's a whole new stage of awful. Oh yeah, that's the idea of this section. Every area that you've been to is just worse. Even the saw blade section gets worse. You know, they made the platforming spin. Spin? Who's sick enough to make you play through that? Then we have all the worst parts about it. This stupid wheel. In DMC3, there are these wheels that you come across time and again. It usually helps change something about the environment. In this case, you need to hit multiple of them multiple times. But that's not really a problem as the MacGuffins you find. You need to find 3 of these. Look, MacGuffins would imply something interesting, so I'm going to call them a variety of different things. Find 3 of the Lucky Charms, head back to the start of the level. Sounds easy, but the wheels make this incredibly complex. Way more than it should be. This is a horrible, homophobic, and disgusting level. Level 16. More backtracking. Just to get to something that looks like what comes after me after Taco Bell. Level 17. So in this level oh no. Platforming in DMC is forbidden. Apparently the only game in the series that gets it right is DMC Don't Make Right. But at least I have other things to talk about, like, let me see here, more backtracking. Really? Level 18 is the level that does a boss rush, which I do like, but I really dislike the stupid chessboard. All the worst enemies in one big fight section. Yeah, I think I'll pass. Level 19. This level has to smash mirrors because reasons, and another enemy type, but this level is mostly here to put something before the second big boss, basically. Haha, good one. Now shut up. I have something important to say. Baja Blast really is the best soda. Look guys, I'm running out of things to say. Future Splinter, take it away. Outro. Yes, Splinter, I will. And yeah, of course, Baja Blast is the best soda. I thought that was common knowledge. When it comes to level design, DMC3 has a little bit of everything wrong with it. Puzzles, confusing levels, gimmick levels, platforming, backtracking, combat rooms not working, you name it, it has it. So let's go down this list like an Epstein flight log. I don't understand this game's use of puzzles because they aren't puzzles. They're just there to waste time. Almost all of them don't make you think. One of them, point the line. Okay, I've seen this a million times before. But this one, you put a box in the box hole. Wow, really compelling. Confusing levels take up more of this game than it should. Every level in DMC has some kind of level that's hard to know where you're going time to time. But it should be, at most, one level. In DMC3, nearly every level is confusing. You have to go back to find a thing or put the thing in the thing with the thing. It's not as annoying for me since I've played this game so much, but for newcomers, I can only imagine the nightmare of playing DMC3 for the first time and not knowing where to go. Sometimes it's not even clear where you're supposed to go or what thing you need to get. And this can also be said for mostly every level. Then you have the gimmick levels. They are also a problem. Looking at you, Mission 8, where the game feels like it wants to throw you a curveball, even if it feels completely unnecessary, like the maze. Who designed that? And most importantly, why? DMC3 doesn't need this. Then you have some of the platforming. There is only one big example. There are smaller ones as well. But the big box room, that takes the cake. I don't know how anyone could enjoy this. The game clearly isn't designed for air combat, so I doubt it's designed for complex air movement. It's even worse with Vergil. Then you get to the next two biggies. Backtracking plagues this game so much that I'm honestly concerned I might have to call the popo, because this shit is criminal. Having to go back and forth doing the task that feels awful and repetitive, even in S ranking certain levels, you need to backtrack to get an S. And the last half of the levels completely turn into this. You want to know something funny? I don't have footage for it, but in one of the levels you can go all the way back to where the lady fight room is. I don't know, it's called the library or whatever. And the game stops you and it's like, yeah, you can't go here yet. So I'm just imagining Dante walking up to the door telling lady, yo, I'll be back with the milk, and leaves. Then we have the final issue being the combat arenas. A lot of them don't work, either because the camera is so terrible or the arena has some wacky stuff in it. These can make these areas create a struggle to play. Put all these together and you have many reasons why this level design in this game is so awful. First, let's clarify something. 3 Vergil isn't bad. He's just not deep. When I think of top villains in video games, 3 Vergil doesn't come to mind, and I'm sorry that I mentioned that he was one in my Arkham Knight video. But for a villain to be truly good, they need proper motives and to be complex. So let's go over it right now. Okay, in order to do that, let's review all the other DMC antagonists. Mundus, intimidating, but wants power. Argus wants power. Arkham wants power specifically from Sparta. The Pope wants power. And half of Vergil wants power. Okay, guys. Out of that brilliant analysis, what's the correlation? Don't worry, I know it's hard. Just take your time. They all... no. Editing Splinter, you are the dumb... Power. They all want power. Every villain in the series ties back to this in many ways. For all of that I've mentioned, there is only one sole motive and character trait. They are nowhere near close to complex. There is no reason as to why, they just simply are motivated because they just are. And this is where Vergil comes in. DMC3 Vergil actually has a reason for why he wants power. He believes that without power you can't protect anyone else. And that's kinda good. Don't get me wrong, there are smaller things as well, like his, design, attitude, and voice. But I don't want to focus on that. I just want to focus on the core character. And people say, bro, he's the best antagonist in the series. And I say, have you seen the competition? Yeah, he's the best, but that isn't hard. The average Arkham antagonist runs circles around them, but let's say that's not fair. I'll take a very random villain from a game that I've played. Sadiq. Sadiq from Splinter Cell Blacklist, he's a really good villain. His main motives is to withdraw all the US military across the world. He has a mindset that's pretty understandable for the current world that we live in. GLaDOS is a great villain, as well as being so funny and interesting that you just can't help but to like her. Handsome Jack was great in the Tales of the Borderlands. I think 3 Vergil needs more to be compelling to be a, greater antagonist. But again, he isn't bad. But he is the bad guy. There has been argument about if Vergil was in the right or not, which has to be the dumbest argument in the whole DMC community. I do not understand this one bit. Vergil opened up the demon portal that was going to kill millions, and he already summoned the tower that already killed a few hundred people, at least. There are tons of Reddit warriors that still say, he not bad guy. Bitch, a bad guy is determined by killed or going to kill innocent people. Both Vergil did. Checkmate liberal, end of the argument, in under a minute. For my next trick, I'll solve world hunger. I get it. He's not pure evil, but he certainly isn't misunderstood, like people say. Plus, guys, I also want to mention, Alpha and Omega, which is what he's referred to in DMC5 as a subtitle. That literally is just a fancy way of saying he is God. So, if you could, try and cross-reference that with any other DMC villain, I think you'll find some overlap. Then there is an issue when it comes to the community that thinks he's a Chad, and some people make him their whole personality, and it's super annoying to try and explain. I go like, dude, this guy killed and was going to kill hundreds of people, and their response is, no, Sigma. I swear to God, if Vergil was a pedo, the community would still be finding a way to say, well, in Vergil's defense, she looked over 18. Waste of my time. Now, you might have noticed that I have yet to talk about 2 antagonists. That would be Vergil and Mundus. I've been holding back because I truly do think they are great villains. Vergil and Mundus have a strong connection with Dante. Plus, they have an actual reason for wanting power. You might say, Splinger, that's just one scene. Okay, well, I'm pretty sure that's a slur, and that's still one more scene than most of the other villains in the series. And it's not even counting Vergil's downfall, which handles Vergil amazingly. So much so that DMC5 straight up copied elements from Downfall's Vergil. So why is it that so many people like 3 Vergil? I think this point leads to one answer. The DMC community is obsessed with cool characters. It doesn't matter the depth or the complexity. I try to point it out, but the community rather focus on how cool Vergil uses his sword. And yes, I've loosely heard this from friend of the channel, Magic Schoolbase.
Hell yeah! Boom! Slam! Yeah! Oh, fuck, I forgot. This is gay. I'm sorry, guys.
And most of the community sees it that way as well. Okay, a little bit off topic, but I think it still connects. You know the whole DMC Devil May Cry downfall to DMC5 connection I made earlier? I've heard from my community that half of them like it, while the other half think not so highly of it. Some believe that Vergil should have stayed with the idea that power and the pursuit of it is solely because of his mother's death, while Downfall, and later on, shows that there is far more to it than that, such as jealousy and facing his own weaker self. I lean into the camp of 5 being a good thing. I'm glad 5 took some influence from one of DMC Devil May Cry's more underrated ideas. But then again, DMC 5 takes a lot of inspiration from DMC Devil May Cry, but the community won't tell you that. So what's the conclusion? 3 Vergil isn't a bad character story-wise, but it could use some work. I fear that this community is too focused on what makes a character cool than what makes a good character. Not only that, but every time I see a video that says DMC is deeper than you think. Oh hey, that's the same guy that thinks DMC Devil May Cry Dante should have been an insane murderer.
They allowed their delusions to warp people they disagreed with into evil monsters to justify committing acts of terrorism.
So Dante was from a protagonist that goes on a journey to better himself and takes responsibility for the protection of humankind. But now he's quite literally just crazy, a copycat that isn't cool, and that murders multiple humans. Bro, what the fuck? Thank God the DMC community only chooses the best to represent us. Anyway, don't believe that. DMC is great gameplay-wise. DMC didn't blow up because of its story. It was always its gameplay. But that doesn't mean DMC can't or hasn't had good stories. It's just not the focus. So here's how we're going to do this. The enemies in this game are the worst in the series. It isn't even close. Yes, DMC 2's enemies are better. So I have a plan to split this section of the video into 3 parts. The first part, I'll talk about the smaller beginner enemies that range from good to annoying. Part 2, I'll talk about the chess enemies. And Part 3, we'll talk about the absolute worst enemies this game has to offer. Alright, let's go. Smaller and mid enemies. I don't care who you are, the enemy design in this game sucks, and I'm going to explain why. Let's start off with the fact that some of these enemies are made to just annoy you. Enigmas are a good example. They solely like to be in the background chipping away at your health. If you go after them, they'll just back up sometimes. They can fire multiple times, and if you can believe it, your style matters in this case. Maybe you'll do fine with Gunslinger, but outranging them is a bad idea. You can Royal Guard, somehow if you're that good, or with Trickster or Quicksilver, if you have a lot of bar, you may have a chance. With Swordmaster and Doppelganger, you're just boned. The problem is in DMD, where the problems begin, because the developers know that it's annoying to deal with, so in DMD they just spam this enemy type with little thought, and you can just hope to God that DT Explosion will help you. Then there's the smaller things. Greed is just an enemy type that spawns more enemies to make the fights last longer. Envy, you can't do any air combos because they don't go up for some reason. The damn Queen can just charge at you from off screen. Arachnids are mostly fine when they hit you, so they're a good enemy type. No, I'm just kidding. Not until they hit you with something off screen again. That could keep you up for no reason. And somebody thought it would be a good idea to have tiny spiders leak out of the arachnid that will attach to you and damage you at random points, making you stagger. These enemies have their problems, but they aren't close to as bad as the next 2 sections. Chess. Let's quickly talk about the worst group of enemies, with a theme throughout DMC history. I get that most of the main enemies have a theme. They are named or similar to the theme of hell, such as 7 Deadly Sins, because when you think of hell, that comes close. I guarantee not a single person on this planet when thinking about hell was like, hell? Chess, of course. And look, I get it. Not every enemy needs to follow a theme, but why chess? Okay, so the theme is stupid. What about everything else? Yeah, it gets worse. These enemy types are rocks. Look, let me show you. Every enemy in this game can be staggered in some way. Not every enemy, but work with me here. The chess enemy types do not move. In fact, they move like they have to take breaks just to stay mobile. So they can't even move and they don't even get staggered. Surely this means they're a big threat. No! Ooh, bit of a voice crack there. They are just slow-moving, ineffective stone. I can't even combo on them. So they're just rocks. I'm hitting rocks. I guess I should hit up a couple miners, not that kind, shut up, and they take up as much time of the late game. If one, and I mean one of these enemies types were in DMC Devil May Cry, we would literally never hear the end of it. And the last half of the game is nearly filled with these enemies. They are so bad. Their wind-ups are just so long. Parts of their bodies turn red when they're about to attack. Gosh, he's about to attack. I better have a quick snack break before I dodge. Not only that, but they look horrible. They have this grayish color and their animations is pitiful, and they don't even have a walking animation. The only thing I like is the fact that there's a healer, which is the only support enemy in this game. Don't even get me started on the dumb chessboard. This is why they are the worst group of enemies in the series. They are truly the worst this game has to offer. Well, second worst. The worst enemies in this game. This game's enemies remind me of a broken trampoline. You jump on it once, you think it's all good, you get really high, and then on your way down it breaks. Oh, there's plenty more that came from Ending Splinter. In this part of the section, let's talk about the worst of the worst. The angels can suck my nuts. The angels are already in hot water with me, simply because of the fact that they are in the air most of the time. You see, that wouldn't be a problem if we were in DMC 5 or DMC Devil May Cry, where you can easily use aerial moves. Even in 4 has a better time with this. But if you've checked which game you're playing, let's see, that's DMC 3. And that means your day's about to suck. If you've played DMC 3 long enough, you know that air combat isn't a big part of this game. In fact, it takes years just to master how it works, just to get a good air combo. Because the air movement and air inputs are very, very small. There is no caliber, there is no hooks, there is no air launchers, nothing. So you can now see why air enemies are a bad idea. It's a pain in most versions of DMC 3. Freestyle makes it a bit better, but not by much. And guess what it can do?
Yes.
Go through walls, because that makes the enemy even better. They love shielding themselves to make an attacking feeling like I'm hitting a Greek god. Speaking of which, the next few enemies will make you jump off a bridge as well. These shield guys run around and hit them in the back. Yeah, that's it. That's all you do. That's the enemy type that they wanted to go with. There's literally no depth or complexity to it. You might say, hey, Splinter, you filthy ginger. There is a similar enemy in DMC Devil May Cry. And, okay, calm down with the racial slurs. However, there is a big difference. The similar enemy in DMC Devil May Cry can be dealt with in completely different ways, such as using the scythe charge, using Eric's charge, using guns, using DT, and most importantly, you can still hit them. That's right, you might do less damage, but you can still hit them at any time. In DMC 3, hitting them from the back is all you can do, making this enemy completely one-dimensional. And this can be said for 2 other enemies as well, the Soul Eaters and the stupid red birds. For the first one, you turn around, wait, shoot, then do that every time you play against them. The other one you can do is shoot, then hit them. Now do that every time you ever face them. You see, these are gimmick enemies. They are solely annoying because you must do something every time to beat them. But the problem is what they are doing. Exclusively shooting enemies, that's a good thing. But they already exist. They were in Mission 2. Did we forget about that enemy type? As for the other 2, well, what does attacking the back add to the gameplay? It's not, like, when do you need it? Like, at all. Some enemies block, but that is so rare. All you need to do is just keep hitting at them anyway. And turning around. And when is that ever useful? Other than the enemies, I cannot think of a single time where this is helpful. Outro. If you can tell, I'm really salty about DMC3's enemy designs. It's the worst in the series. What really pisses me off is how DMC3's enemies are talked about in the wider DMC community. It seems when the topic is brought up, it's dealt with kid glove fashion. They treat it as if it's a small thing that could have been looked over, simply. But fighting the enemies is nearly the whole game. And the last half of this game is filled with the worst enemies. You guys are going to hate it, but I'm going to do it again. The DMC community's take on DMC Devil May Cry's enemies is hypocritical. So much bitching and moaning about DMC Devil May Cry's color-coded enemies.
Some you'll encounter happen to be color-coded, only taking damage and stagger from specific demon or angel weapons. The Hell and Frost Knights, the Ghost and Blood Rage variants are some of the various color-coded enemies. These guys really suck on your first playthrough. A lot of the time when they show up in the early game, you'll most likely only have one of each colored weapon and not many attacks to go with them. This is obviously super restrictive from a basic gameplay standpoint. You'll be painfully mashing out the same attacks until they die, killing the fun and flow of combat.
Single.
The PS4 version promotes having rebalanced gameplay from the original release, and I can only imagine what that means, since already there are issues like blue enemies and red enemies only taking real damage from weapons of the corresponding color, which just limits the amount of creativity that you can put into your combos, hence why the loading screens have to show you how good their combat is. In previous DMC games, keeping
Bruh,
They show fucking jump cancels in the loading screen, oh my god, it's so fucking cool.
I fucking can't.
They show fucking jump cancels in that shit. When was that ever done in any other DMC game?
But,
oh my
but
god.
guys, when the loading screen and combos, you guys don't understand. It was covering up the color-coded enemies this whole time.
Video on DMC Devil May Cry needs to have a section just to talk about the color-coded enemies. Even though the color-coded enemies are only 4 enemies, but technically 2 because they're copies of each other. So again, 2, and even though it has been fixed in DE since 2015, they will still complain about it. Yet, when DMC3 has the most cancerous enemies in the series, where near all of them suck, they just don't care or not address it at all. Yeah, mini rant over. Hate these enemies, they are the biggest thing that holds this game back. Let's talk about a character that I didn't think would make it into this review/analysis. Vergil. Vergil is a character added in the later edition of the game. It was one of the few times you could play it outside of Dante, so is Vergil good? No, he's not. A lot of characters feel unfinished, but honestly, he's more of a boss than a playable character. But I'll touch upon this later. There are many different characters in the DMC series. A majority of them, at least, are above average. They range from super complex to underwhelming. I don't really count DMC 1 and 2 for this, not any personal reason, I just haven't played those games enough. The bottom of DMC is usually filled with characters that don't have complexity, but are at least fun and... What is that? Okay. Anyway, Trish and Lady come to mind, being mindless fun, but not super... Okay, fine. Let's talk about V real quick. V is the worst character in the series gameplay-wise, and it's not even a contest. The weird inputs to the god-awful auto-control. Yeah, in a DMC game, I want the game to do the combos for me. Yeah, right. You can literally button mash. V is the pinnacle of bad design in a DMC game, and right next to him is 3 Vergil, and I stand by this claim. I rather Lady and Trish because they have more variety and more depth to their combat. The only reason why 3 Vergil is used is because he's Vergil. But before you refute my claim, let's break it down. First, his weapons. Oh boy. Vergil has 3 weapons in total: Beowulf, Force Edge, and Yamato. Beowulf is not as good as Dante's Beowulf. Dante's Beowulf has a ton of moves, even better with Swordmaster. Here's an example. One of the ideas behind Beowulf was the idea of holding the button for more damage. Vergil's Beowulf does not have this. Here's another example. There is also one combo you can do with Vergil, and that's it. Nothing else. Now you're starting to get what I mean when I talk about him being unfinished. Not to mention that the moves that Vergil has with Beowulf feel off. For instance, instead of charging moves for Beowulf, for the input, he just does a strange upward movement, which doesn't make sense when I already have that with 2 other weapons. But most importantly, it lacks the power with this one move. Even Dante's Beowulf had damage to an upward movement attack, which is something this move lacks. But that's not the best part. Apparently, the forward input is a spinning kick? What? That I don't know. I think it's like the move that Cerberus had, but it doesn't have the range and the large hitbox, and 2, it's not a crowd control weapon. This move is out of place. Then there's the Force Edge, which literally does everything Rebellion does, but there's nothing much to talk about. Of course, the only air move is down. Thanks. But Yamato is pretty similar to Rebellion. It has a launch move, a stinger type move, and a pretty effective hit. It's just how it's executed that makes it different. The launch move can be followed up with a downward strike, doing a lot of damage. The stinger move has a delay of effect, and it's really weird. So it's similar, but not the same. However, the move feels out of place, but we'll get to that. One thing to mention about the air move is that it's literally perfect. It can be JC'd a ton, and it has great timing. I dare to say this move fits his kit well. Also, judgment cuts suck in this game. It takes too long, and you can't even use it in the air. But let's talk about Darkslayer. You see, instead of giving the player a few sets of moves that can be mastered to perfection, or moves that can expand your weapons, you get half of Trickster. I kid you not. This is one of the worst styles in the DMC series, hands down. The teleport can sometimes work, sometimes not. It's extremely hard to use for dodging, you know, what Trickster was made for. Moreover, this move is kind of a pain. It's not useless per se, but it's not good. But of course, there's more. Yay! His guns are strange. They are basically arrows that shoot at will, whenever you want to. even in animations. So this means you can spam the arrows and hit with an insane amount of damage to the enemies, even when you're doing taunts. Yes, this is where it falls apart, because when we take this character and put him into the main game, which he is not built for, Vergil is very powerful and tends to go up against enemies with little thought. Even the game knows this, so at the beginning it locks you for more of your powerful moves of the moves that you would later get. And once you do, the gates of hell open to your opponents. Not even Dante stands a chance against you, but you do so much damage, man. Alright, let's go over something I mentioned but didn't get into until now. Teleportation. In Vergil's kit, there is 3 ways to teleport. In front of the enemy, back, or up. I'd say that this is good. For most characters, this is, but Vergil's case, there's a problem. This yet again ties into his moveset. Let's say you back up. Then do what? You can't Stinger with Beowulf because that's too far away. You can't Rapid Slash with Yamato because that's only for certain situations because it's simply too slow and can't be cancelled out of. So you either Stinger with Force Edge or you do a combo hoping that the end of it hits the enemy. Or let's say you teleport up. Then what? Last I checked, Buster, you've only got 3 air moves, and that's my problem with teleportation. Vergil needs something to pair up with it. Rapid Slash and throwing Force Edge takes up to 3 to 4 business days, so teleporting is helpful. But more moves need faster output. And this is where the Summon Swords come in, because instead of giving him faster moves or letting Vergil teleport freely, you can spam until your hands hurt. Yay. Why do damage when Summon Swords can just do the work for me? And yes, I know other Vergils have it, but it's in the context that makes them different. You need to have a whole and full kit to work with the philosophy and ideas that 3 Vergil merely playing with. A funny thing occurred to me the more I played the game as Vergil. Why is there an upward slash with Yamato, yet you don't go up with the enemy? Think about it, Vergil and 90% of DMC characters' high times actually goes up with the enemy. So why not this version? Then I thought of the first boss fight with Vergil, then it clicked. It's meant to be an anti-air move. The move was designed to stop Dante from attacking, but was meant to be dodged. That's why the next move is a downward slash. The AI Vergil doesn't know how to combo, unlike us. Even more things fall into place, like how Beowulf doesn't charge. Why can't it? Well, that's because it'd be too easy to dodge as Dante. Why does Force Edge only go down? Well, that's because it's a part of the Mission 20 boss fight. It's a part of a string of attacks that start from the top but are meant to be finished on the way down. Playable 3 Vergil is a character that just is a boss fight. Nearly every Vergil move is from the boss fight because of limited resources. That's why every Vergil after have more moves. Speaking of future Vergils, there's a lot to talk about of who's the best Vergil. DMC Devil May Cry has a good use of teleportation and doppelganger. DMC 4 Vergil has good cancels, inertia, and tech. DMC 5 Vergil has the most amount of moves, but I certainly can tell you, it's not DMC 3 Vergil. There just isn't enough bone for this version. Nothing 3 Vergil comes close to the rest, and he feels completely underbaked. So in closing, 3 Vergil is a good step, but not a good character. The lack of moves, the lack of air combat, the issue of weapons, the only really good thing I find about this character is the teleportation. Other than that, 3 Vergil isn't finished. And I get it, 3 Vergil was made with a small budget in mind, but I'm glad 3 Vergil took one for the team. While I don't like 3 Vergil, I'm proud that the other Vergils built off of that. Without 3 Vergil, current day Vergil wouldn't be where he is today. 3 Vergil died for all of our sins. Can I get an amen? And because of this, it's the second worst playable character in the series. Also, why the fuck are there moves locked behind a certain skin? Vergil barely has moves as it is, why lock? Whatever. In this section, we'll be looking over all the styles of DMC3. 2 haven't returned to Dante in the later games, making DMC3 quite special. This is also the first time styles were truly introduced to the series. So, let's go over the must-needed Trickster, the odd Gunslinger, the awesome Quicksilver, the hard-to-learn Doppelganger, the combo-focused Swordmaster, and the best roll guard we've gotten. Trickster. So this style exists. Yeah, pretty much. Thank you, okay, I need to talk about it. This feels like a very unnecessary style as its own thing. Out of all the styles, it feels the least complex. Teleporting and dashing multiple times is nice, but due to it being limited, it doesn't quite reach the potential it could. There's no real reward for evading or any reward for doing much with this style. However, I do love the idea of running on walls. It's too bad this was never expanded upon in future games in the series. Honestly, there's nothing else that needs to be said. This needs to be a necessity, not an option. I can't even use other gun moves or weapons move because of this. I don't talk about this often, but Trickster level 1 is dog water. I wanted it to be at level 2, but I can't select it because I can't use it that often. Why? Because the only thing that Trickster level 1 has is just the one dash on the ground. And that's super useless in any situation. So yeah, I have to force myself to kind of sort of play it. But like, I don't know. I just wish I could just buy it like any other DMC game. You only get one dash on the ground and that's it. It was so hard leveling up in Freestyle because I rarely used it. What purpose does it serve at level 1? Anyway, yeah, the air trick is cool and so is the triple dash. But honestly, I don't understand why this style needs to be its own, well, style. I get that you already have the jump and the roll, but these just come off as cumbersome. But Trickster just makes it, in a sense, feel a lot better. And by the by, this isn't a problem with Freestyle. Since you have everything, this point really doesn't apply to that edition, but most other versions don't have this, and it's worth bringing up. The main reason why I think this ended up being a style is due to bring in new players. If you tell the player, hey, this style is for beginners, choose it if you want to get through the game easier. But honestly, the best thing for players, which style of course, is Swordmaster. Style is hard to get on the original version, and damage is hard to do. And Swordmaster had both of these, which goes back to my point. This style should have been in the game as a necessity. Another example of DMC3 being hard for no reason anyway. Anyway, Trickster isn't good on its own, but Freestyle after level 1 makes it good. Moving on. Gunslinger. Gunslinger is very similar to Swordmaster, that being an expansion of moves with more than one button, but for guns. Most of the time the moves seem unnecessary. Nearly all of them focus on crowd control, making them seem similar to each move. That's why Gunslinger is having a hard time sticking out. It's not a gimmick, but it's very focused on a handful of moves. Sure, there is good stuff in the style, but it's not even close to Swordmaster and Royal Guard. I think it's mostly due to the weapons themselves being a bit cheap and uninspired. Artemis and Spiral struggle at times. Spiral is better when you have Gunslinger, but even then, it's pretty one note. Unless you are using any cancel tech, you can't shoot it in the air. I just want to add a quick editing note for the future. I don't believe this anymore about the guns. I've positively stated that I do like the guns in my gun section, so if you feel like you want to get the more updated version, there it is. I just wanted to say that real quick. But I wanted to leave it in here because that's what I originally thought when I first wrote the script. And keep in mind, some of the script is way back from years ago, when I originally didn't have the Freestyle and I worked on it a long time ago. Anyway, I just wanted to leave it in here, that way I can make a quick correction right here and now, just to update my thoughts on it. Anyway, Boogala Boogala, Tug My Tugala, and Artemis is the strangest gun that has been in the DMC series.
I don't understand a thing in this game, bro. This game has done nothing but just confuse me, bro. You know what I'm saying? I just don't understand what's going on.
Okay, maybe not the strangest, but certainly out of all the weapons, it's kind of weird. With moves that are short range and then moves that can hit multiple enemies, not to mention that the charged one on the style button is very uncomfortable. In general, Gunslinger needs a boost of different moves and ability if it's going to consider it to be as its own thing. No mobility, no weapons, no defense. However, I keep coming back to this style. If some of you may know, I made a video on the second channel a long time ago named I Miss Gunslinger. It's actually my most viewed video on the channel. And sure, I can say I'm just that good, but I think it speaks to a bigger idea. Gunslinger really was something special in DMC3. A great example of this is Ebony and Ivory. In the DMC games, they don't really do that much, but in 3, they're unbelievably powerful and way more dangerous with skill. In Freestyle, it's even better. With all the guns at once, Gunslinger feels much better. Switching between all the weapons is great. Even though Ebony and Ivory are still too good for their own good, and by that I mean it's really hard not to use these guns while in Gunslinger, now with everything in play, the guns feel somehow way more powerful than before. This brings me back to my video. I think a reason why so many liked that video was because Gunslinger has never felt the same again. This can not only be the guns themselves, but how they play in the larger role and the larger gameplay. Now I can back away enemies from short distances and long. Gunslinger is a very underrated style, both in the original and in Freestyle. I wish it got more love later in the series. Quicksilver. Something I don't understand about the sub-styles is that they take up the style spot, but I rather them take up the spot of DT, since DT and the sub-style both take up the same amount of meter. I would love to see what they can do with Quicksilver and Swordmaster. That being said, Quicksilver is a bit of a one-note style. It has one purpose: slow down time for openings, attacks, defense, and mid-air combos. Quicksilver is really great, but sadly it takes up space for other styles. Other styles that can be more useful than Quicksilver. For me at least, it needs to be paired up with something else, with Trickster or Gunslinger. This is basically because 1/4 of the style. It needs more. However, in Freestyle mode, this style is goated. You see, in Freestyle, by simply double tapping the Swordmaster button, you can now equip it. Now, it does still suck that it takes up your DT bar, however, S ranking runs, and style-wise, it's still good. If you're going for an S rank, you really don't need DT, unless it's for DT Explosion, so it can help you get a big edge. Now, here is easily the worst part. For some, on the Switch version of Freestyle, you can't use any other style while using Quicksilver, meaning that it opens up combos, but not as many as it could. While the style sucks in the original, in Freestyle, I think it's a great improvement, but does have more roads it can go down. Doppelganger. Every other style has a very basic backbone. One's for evading, one's for swords, one's for guns, one's for defense, and one stops time. If you had multiple people try to come up with different possibilities for styles, these 5 would be at the top of the list. Doppelganger, on the other hand, is a bit of an odd one. It doesn't function like a typical style, but the amount of depth with this style is pretty scary. While there is some delay that I've never quite figured out, it's great to play in situations. If you want to unload everything on a boss, Doppelganger is there for you. It can also help if you're overwhelmed with too many enemies. The key to these scenarios is to understand what weapons to give to your shadow. If you want damage, it makes sense to give the Doppelganger Beowulf and Spiral. But if you want crowd control, you may want to give it Cerberus and Kalina Ann. You also need to make sure you lock on to your target if you want Doppelganger to attack the same enemy you're attacking. The reason why Doppelganger is so good is because it's so hard to understand at first. Listen to what Past Me had to say in the first edit of this section. So, Doppelgangers in this game, it's not very good. Thank you for that. As seen with Vergil in the reboot, it's not even close to that level. Like, at all. Doppelganger is a sub-style, a style that never comes close to any of the others, and here it really applies.
Listen to that nerd yapping. Shut up, bitch!
Look, it's not an easy style to use, but if you understand the greater context of how to use it, you'll have a much better time. It's not bad at all, just has a bit of a steep learning curve, one that you need to put time and effort into to learning it. I'll say this again, just like I say in all my other sections. This is way better in Freestyle because of all the weapons and options you have. Swordmaster. Swordmaster is by far what people are going to be playing for freestyle and combos. It gives you a lot in your kit. This goes a long way for your weapons, basically giving you another button to work with your devil arms. This is all due to a small change, meaning a lot. Each weapon expanded upon is a very useful tool, most of which I might add unlocks more moves in the air, hints for combos, extra moves, hints for freestyle. And even the bosses aren't safe from this power of Swordmaster, so what weapons you choose is very important. Swordmaster also leans more into the power, generally at least. I noticed that even the crowd control weapons like Cerberus and Nevin did more damage with Swordmaster, so naturally more damage weapons tend to be better with this style. But sadly, the mobility is little. No real form of movement like Trickster, or defense like Royal Guard, or the range of Gunslinger. Playing with it just seems off. The lack of everything but the damage makes me feel as if the game wants this to work, yet lacks other parts of the game. Again, this is what most should choose. But here's the thing. DMC, at the end of the day, is built around combo depth, and Swordmaster gives you more combos, so it's a no-brainer. The problem with the Swordmaster, as I mentioned before, is that there isn't a blocker in evade and range. Nevin can help out with defense, but other than that, you're a bit of a sitting duck sometimes. So the damage you do is very important. You have to be good to be of value. So high risk, high reward. Similar to Royal Guard in a way. I'd like to talk about it more in my freestyle section, but honestly, it's pretty self-explanatory. A style based on damage and combos. What you gonna do? Royal Guard. Royal Guard is quite an interesting case. In many ways, it's very different from the rest of the styles. Royal Guard is a super powerful defensive tool that rewards the player for doing perfect timings for each move. Royal Guard is based around trial and error. If you miss time and again, you will lose a bit of health, making it a risk-reward thing, until you get the back special move, which just gives you health from attacks. In fact, you think this is a defensive style, but that's where you'd be very, very wrong. Not only can you cancel moves with Royal Guard, but you can also use Royal Release, which if timed just right, and when you build up, it can do tons of damage. One that makes this style very terrifying. Don't remind me, I'll just press the delete key. So saying this, you know what I'm gonna say next. You can focus on Royal Guard and it won't feel like you're missing anything. I don't need an extra gun or sword mode if I learn how to use cancels. I don't need mobility if I just block things from a distance. This is the only style that I think can be done on its own game. But because Freestyle Royal Guard feels a little bit underwhelming, having a delete key is nice, but if you don't know the timing, what's the point? And Trickster is right there. So most are going to pick it up and not get the timing and then give up. But with Freestyle, it's always on you, making the idea of using it much better. Oh, guys, remember what I said a few minutes ago? You can focus on Royal Guard and it won't feel like you're missing anything, and I don't need gun or sword moves, blah blah blah. I wanted to leave it here just to show how wrong it is. Sure, Royal Guard is great, it's tough yet rewarding, but there is still more needed to help with different situations, like combos and range are the weak points of this kit. But if out of all the styles to choose, I'd pick this one and say it's the best, but not the one I would prefer. Outro. The style system is to the point where Dante really changed as a playable character. Instead of there being said button for actions, you must switch over to do a certain action. Was that the right choice? I mean, the problem is yes and no. I don't really feel strongly about it, which is strange because if you've watched this video, I usually feel strongly about something either negative or positive, but this system is just there. So maybe let's look over the pros and cons. The pros being the amount of pure depth of the system because it's all up to one button move of said style, so there is a lot of potential. The cons are that it's very cumbersome. Needing to hit the D-pad just to block can come off as annoying. And by the way, I'm talking about the Switch style system version and onwards. I personally believe that it depends on the character. Not every other DMC character has this system, so I think it's up to you if you like the idea of the system or not. I don't feel like I have commentary that I can really be of any use in this issue. However, DMC3 changed the way we look at character depth for having the most amount of actions in the smallest amount of spaces. So viewer, if you could do me a favor and read the timestamp of this video. You saw it? Good. The answer is no, it doesn't. One thing to mention is that this section was seen weeks earlier before then this video was actually released on the second channel, so if you're wondering why it's been edited this way, now you know. But you could guess that, so I'll stop wasting your time. Now, with the annoyances out of the way, no, it doesn't. Well, there's a few reasons. Well, you know what you have to do. Switch to the next section for it. You know, do the thing, ending splitter. I said do the thing. Why do we even need this? Remakes have really been the talk of the town in gaming. We are getting to a point where there are simply too much power for the older generations to keep up with. Remember when 720p was the standard? Now we have 1080p, 4K, nude mods, wait a second. But there are two other reasons for this. Let's face it, gaming companies are running out of ideas. It feels like every year, a small handful of games made by indies blow up, yet we also see AAA games backed by big studios lose up to hundreds of millions of dollars. It's a sign that AAA gaming is now getting too risky with expanded budgets instead of pure talent. And the other factor is that remakes are hot. I mean, just look around. Silent Hill, Final Fantasy VII, Persona 3 Reload. We'll get to that one later. Dead Space, Spyro, and even Resident Evil 2. And the reason I mentioned Resident Evil is for two big reasons. One, Resident Evil 2 Remake had a big impact on the market. Sure, there has been remakes before, but RE2 proves that it has a lot of potential there. Two, it's Capcom, the same company that owns DMC, and the same company that has made multiple remakes of RE games to big success. Okay, so now that we know devs, beyond good and evil. I was in the middle of something, but now that we know what makes them tick, it's time to understand the remake philosophy. Remakes are incredibly hard to do. In some cases you need to divert from the source material, and in some cases you need it to be a one-for-one copy. Knowing the difference can be really hard to understand. So let's just say it's a one-for-one copy. That means we have to deal with the same enemy types, the enemy types that are easily the worst in the series, the same level design. You guys love backtracking and do stupid bullshit. Plus all of the bosses are completely unnecessary, well, most of them, as well as some of the smaller things like the platforming and the air combat. Sure, if we get a game nowadays, it'll look better, but at the end of the day, it still has the same problems, just with a different coat on it. Then we have a problem of changing everything. Most of the game I want to change for the love of God, the weapons and the styles. Please, please, sir, I need them. Just leave them alone. Well, I might have some smaller criticisms toward the weapons. I really do enjoy them. So if they take away some moves or replace some of them, I'm gonna be pissed. Someone will die. And if they double down on Dante being a funny is my personality, not a facade bullshit, I'm going to explode. So I fear we may be in a lose-lose scenario. That's quite pessimistic, Splinter. Go on, ending, Splinter. That was your line. Wow, someone's in a bitchy mood in this section/video. So Persona 3 came out in 2006. Stay with me here, I promise this is important. The main part of Persona's combat is that your allies are controlled via the AI. You can't give them direct actions like your own playable character. Then Persona 3 Fest comes out, same issue. And mostly, people didn't like that. Remember that bit, okay? Then Persona Portable comes out, and yeah, you can now control your party members. That's good, right? It is. However, Persona 3 Portable only has this awful portraits instead of cutscenes. So for a long time, people begged for a remake to put the best of these worlds together. Then the remake came out and did just that. I know there's more and I'm missing a lot of detail, but I'm nearly there, guys. Persona 3 Reloaded had both non-control and direct control combat. So people like this, right? Why wouldn't they like it? Well, you see, there's a few YouTubers, not naming names, where one of the criticism is in this video of how Persona 3 lost its identity, fucking ass title by the way, said that Persona lost its uniqueness because how the AI partners aren't as good, plus the choice apparently isn't good or whatever.
I get that the tactics menu isn't perfect in the original game, but to act like it's completely unusable is just disingenuous.
But you said never. I know what I said!
Yeah, I like the tactics system in Persona 3 now. I was one of those people that used to really dislike the tactics system. I vividly remember struggling with it a lot on my first playthrough of the game. However, as the years have gone on and I've played through Persona 3 more and more, I've grown to appreciate this unique approach to combat, which is why it sucks to see the tactics system get completely gutted in future games.
I'm not trying to strawman him, but this is an absolute 180 if I've ever seen one. In one of his biggest videos on Persona 3, he had mentioned that he didn't like the AI making choices for you. He isn't the only one. This take is awful in so many ways. We wanted Persona 3 to be remade so it could be like future games in the series, like Persona 5. That's the whole reason we wanted a remake. Yet when they get to that part, it's as if the idea disappears. Now, some of you might think that that would never happen to DMC3, but you are strongly in the wrong. Does everyone forget the DMC4 elitists versus the DMC5 normies? If you're out of the know, around the time when DMC5 came out, there was this tension between these two groups. The elitists wanted everything from DMC4, such as the tech, inertia, and mechanics that didn't make it into DMC5. And the normies were so butthurt over this basic criticism that they proclaimed that DMC5 is the best and nearly untouchable. Both sides were pretty stupid in their own ways, and yeah, as a DMC Devil May Cry fan, I kind of enjoyed watching it. The reason I brought up this Persona 3 and DMC4 versus DMC5 dilemma is to show this will happen again with DMC3 if there's a remake of it. It might be about weapons, story, or overall gameplay, but something like this is going to happen again. And unless they are somehow going to appeal both sides, but that's very rare. What we actually need to do. So after going through all that, what do we need to do? IDK, man, go ask your mom. So if DMC3 doesn't get a remake, what else should the people crave? I have a counteroffer. People say, I want DMC3 style switch, or I want to play as DMC3 weapons again. Then my ginger in Christ, you don't want a remake. You want Freestyle and all the weapons as DLC. First, let me mention, I'm not down with the idea of console exclusives. Nobody cared when DE was only on Xbox One and PS4 because that gave the community another reason to hate it, but when DMC 5 SE only comes out on the consoles, then suddenly anybody cares. But the Switch being the only version to have Freestyle is a crime. It's the version that people have been asking for years now. The developers always wanted it to go that way, but couldn't do it because of the limited hardware. So now, that's not an excuse anymore. And if you really love Nevin, Agni and Ruja, OG Cerberus, Spiral, Artemis, and all the other styles, you don't want a remake, you want DLC. I would kill for these weapons in 5 and DMC Devil May Cry. If we push for this as much as we push for Vergil, we can get those things. We don't need a remake for it. There is so much more that can go wrong with a remake. That and Freestyle gives the combos more depth. You can make plenty of combo mads already. You know what games don't have as much combo depth? 1 and 2. So here's my other counter offer. Let's make a remake of 1 and 2. Since Kamiya is back at Capcom, let him work on a remake of 1. It would be a perfect game for DMC 1. And DMC 2 can be made without any complaints about what the end product is because there's not a lot of DMC 2 fans out there. So the likelihood you're going to piss somebody off is very rare. So in conclusion, we don't need a DMC 3 remake. Out of the original 3, DMC 3 is the least important to remake. Not only that, but a remake will come with various issues. But if you want elements of DMC 3, we just need DLC. Or better yet, give DMC 1 and 2 the remakes it needs. I think this whole conversation is a bit dumb. Yes, and DMC 3 remake is easy money to make, but that doesn't mean it has to be the best option for the series. Check out the Discord, we talk about DMC all the time, and peace! In this section, we'll be looking over some of the bosses in this game. I go down the line, piece by piece, to analyze them in a way that no one has done before. The average boss in this game is questionable. DMC 3 feels the need to fill almost every level with a boss, even if you don't need it. Like bosses that give you nothing, or bosses in the story that don't make any sense. We'll look back at all of these and question the devs by saying, dude, no. How are they getting worse? Cerberus. Alright, time to piss everyone off. Again. Look, it's not the worst boss, but it isn't special. Cerberus is the first official boss of the game, so it's a hard to reach goal. Give the player a chance to test their skill, and introduce the player to the boss fights of the game. Let's start off with the positives. Using the guns to break the ice is a good idea. It lets the player understand the mechanisms more, and the quick jab is a way to make sure that the player is playing carefully. Except, the boss kind of sucks. Hold on. Let me explain what I mean right now, or why. You see, first playing through the game, I died to Cerberus, then beat him a second time. That's quite good. Remember, I played DMC 3 a lot and the rest of the series longer. I know most of the strats, so dying once means something, and it didn't feel like bullshit to me. But when I played Cerberus on stream later on, and during the recording sections, the fight felt completely flat compared to the first experience. And I couldn't figure out why till I rewatched my stream and I said this.
It's me. You gonna do it again? Really? Alright. Down to the wire. No. I didn't double jump because I don't have it. Playing 4 and 5.
Then it clicked. Take example of the scenario I just mentioned. In that charge, it's super easy to deal with Royal Guard level 2 or Trickster or Double Jump. But the game knows that the first time you fight the boss, you don't have those. Nearly every bit of the boss is like that. Take example the ice. It's much easier to shoot off with a leveled up gunslinger or a leveled up guns. The icicles falling are hard to deal with without Royal Guard or a leveled up Trickster. So I think one of the main reasons why this fight is loved is because of this. But stacking it up against most bosses in the series, I can see why others may like it. But looking at it on its own with the late game Dante, the whole fight just feels too easy. It just isn't designed well enough at higher levels. Anyway, I want to add something now that I've played the boss more. Getting an S rank for this mission is really tough, and for a while I couldn't figure out why until I kept getting hit by the same thing over again. You see, each head does something different. One of them uses icicles, and this means it's a pain in the ass to dodge. Not only that, but you can only see it until last second, and this one move is the S rank killer for me. I want to talk about an issue with a lot of DMC3's bosses. Sometimes bosses have specific weaknesses. 90% of the time it's one weapon, and Cerberus is an excellent example of this. Agni and Rudra, the weapon and the boss, is the perfect example. Agni and Rudra, the Devil Arm of course, are so useful against Cerberus that it's not even funny. You can just spam the same attack in the air over and over again to get as much damage as possible, and you don't even need Swordmaster. Plus, Cerberus is weak to fire, and ANR is the only fire-related weapon. I really don't need to use any other weapon against him that's this powerful, at least. But that ties back into what I've started with. On your first playthrough, you don't have Agni and Rudra, so of course you struggle first fight. Overall, Cerberus isn't a bad boss, it's just the devs didn't account for the options that are available later on in the game. Let me see, what's the next boss fight up? Who the fuck is Gigapede? I hate this boss. It's so dumb. This is by far not a hot take, but I need to vent. Who designed this? This boss is so ass, I'm gonna explain why. First off, let's talk about the biggest part of this boss that makes it fall apart. The space. In DMC, you need to have bosses stand still. That is something that the boss does not understand. It's either hiding or on the other side of the arena. It's also so hard to deal with because the only way to do real damage is to get on top of it, but that doesn't happen consistently, which means 90% of your fight will just walking and waiting around just to hit the boss. And the attacks, yeah right, it seems to only really have 3. The lightning on top of it, the purple balls, and the blue balls. Other than that, this boss doesn't really fight back. Like, that's the whole point of a boss, is to exchange blows, offense and defense, but this boss is literally a nothing burger. Honestly, I know I'm going to get some pushback for this. Honestly, I'd rather play a DMC2 boss. And no, that is not an exaggeration. At least a DMC2 boss, I can shoot him because they aren't hiding. The only one that's really a problem is the purple balls. Apparently the boss shoots them so fast that if you get hit by one, you're bound to get hit by literally all the ones after that. The boss doesn't give you anything after, so the point of this fight is... yeah, thought so. That is something that I mentioned in the intro and will touch upon later on in the bosses. DMC3 loves boss fights so much that it will literally put one at end of nearly every level, even if the boss isn't worth it. And this is the first example of it. It doesn't give you anything, or you don't learn anything other than the boss for the boss' sake. On top of this, it doesn't even fit a good thing. It doesn't even connect with a certain enemy type or anything like that. It's just a large flying centipede. Jester. So after the base game came out, the team planned to make something extra for the special edition. Vergil being playable, of course, and Jester boss fights. They could have fixed or added anything else, yet the one thing DMC3 really needed was more boss fights. Look, it's not bad, it's just kind of safe. You spam the guns and dodge the stuff. Though it's in the detail where this makes a difference. Jester has a lot of different ball patterns. They aren't super hard to dodge, but you still need to pay attention. This makes the whole loop a bit tedious. Dodge, shoot, hit, dodge, shoot, hit. Doing this on repeat kind of gets you in a rhythm, so that depends on the player if they like the rhythm or not. Personally, I'm not a big fan. I do like how the later fights get totally chaotic, but the first one and the second one aren't that interesting. In fact, I skipped every chance I get. But what I don't understand is, why do I have to fight him 3 times, and they don't even feel that different? Speaking of which, you'll notice that throughout this section, I talk about Vergil 1, 2, and 3 differently. That's because, while having similarities, they are different fights, different attack patterns, and different strategies. One of them I really like, one of them I really don't like, and one of them I think is just kind of mid. You'll see later on. All that is to say that Jester doesn't change that much over 3 different times. 3 is more than all the bosses excluding Vergil, of course. But is it really worth it? Sorry, I've mostly been complaining about fighting him 3 times, but I just don't get it. And wonder if the focus was on the bosses in this game, Actually, out of all the DMC games, DMC 3 feels like it's its sole duty to make as many bosses as possible. It feels like they wanted to almost imitate DMC 1's repeat in bosses. I'll get back to that another time. But for now, Jester is an okay fight, but could be much better, and the second and the third bite were way more different. I think I said bite instead of fight, but I'm leaving that in anyway because I think it's funny. Agni and Rudra. While being one of the strangest bosses in the series, it's pretty good. You see, Agni and Rudra is a double fight. Double boss fight, I mean. Meaning, you have to fight both at the same time, so you have to juggle two bosses by not getting hit or hitting them. However, there is something that makes this boss so different. It's called parrying. You might be saying, Splinter, you made my booty hole tinkle a little bit because only Vergil and certain enemies could actually have a parry system in this game. A weird way of saying that, but yes, it is one of the rare instances in DMC3 where you can parry stuff. So why is that? Honestly, I think that's the only way for this boss to work. Think about it. The boss typically doesn't stagger. If you hit one or the other boss hits you, it kind of feels unfair. So you need to be careful. If there's two bosses, it's simply impossible to hit one to get without getting hit by another one. So parrying is important. So what? Well, this comes into the first problem I have with this boss, Cerberus. No, not the boss, you benign, ignorant fool, Ending Splinter. The weapon has a lot of great moves, but one out of all of them is really the best. Easily the roulette, and it also happens to be one of the best for parrying. On top of that, the game knows that on your first playthrough, the only weapons you have is Rebellion and Cerberus. So if I haven't said this before, I'll say it again. Some bosses really rely on certain weapons far too much. Agni and Rudra is a perfect example of this. In my footage of hitting them, I tend to use Cerberus nearly all the time. Why? Because it's the best of taking care of them. Roulette is such a wide attack that can hit from behind and has a long window of time, meaning that this move is just too good for taking care of them, and it's not even close. Maybe A&R for the jokes, but Cerberus is easily a necessity here. It has the perfect move for the boss. And I think it's a bit of a shame. They have potential to be even better, but it's focused on one weapon. Aside from that, there are other things that do make up for that. The way that they jump away to jump back on you is pretty cool. It's perfect for breathing time and gives you a great raw guarding experience. Also, I like the mechanic that if you take out one of them, the other one will use both swords, making your life even more painful. So how good is this boss? Honestly, I believe this boss is better than most bosses in this game. However, it is a bit, well no, just a little bit. I think that they put more time into having other weapons be better, or the boss giving him more moves would make it a lot better. Vergil 1. Vergil 1 is like choosing to go out to your favorite fast food place thinking that it's going to be good, but once eating your food, you realize it's just fast food. It's not a bad fight, it's just kind of there. The only thing that really pisses me off is the slash that goes up and down after the parry. The margin of error is so small. I have Trickster, Guard, and Jump, but I swear to God, I barely missed the time frame. Other than that, all you need to do is just pay attention. He's a pretty self-explanatory boss. Things like Judgment Cut and combos all leave him wide open, so it's not safe to stand close to Vergil all the time. I'll talk about him more later on. Leviathan's Heart. Oh yeah, this is a DMC3 boss alright. I can't call it a puzzle boss, but I can't call it a good boss either. This boss is like a gimmick boss where the gimmick sucks. I just imagine them at Capcom like, guys, we have an idea for this boss fight. Why have one health bar when you can have 3? So this is like Agni and Rudra. No, silly, one is left on the left, and one of the health is on the right. And then when one of them goes down, you can attack the center. Okay, but how does the boss fight back? Good question. Are you enemies? Just enemies. Yeah, thank you, Ending Splinter, for doing that. Anyway, yeah, the boss is really lazy. The enemies barely fight back, so they realize this, so they try to get the player to actually care more. They have to have the left take the orbs and the right DT bar. The only reason why they did this is to drag the fight, and man, I can really tell. DT bar and orbs are important for different reasons. DT is obviously for Doppelganger, Quicksilver, and DT. Without this bar, you miss a lot of damage, dragging this fight out. And orbs don't matter to the fight itself, however, it takes a big piece at the end of your score, so you need to flip back and forth and pick the lesser of the two evils at the moment. But this boss feels incomplete. it needs more parts moving to make this boss mean something, or cut down at least. And it's not a problem of it being easy. As you'll see with Nevin, an easy boss doesn't necessarily mean a bad boss, but in this case, it's just boring. So boring. There's only like one new enemy type anyway. Damage that they do is just super easy to dodge, and like, what's the point? It's just missing some spice up for the fight, like a twist or an attack, something that makes the player think. But once you picked up on most of the stuff of the attacks, the entire fight is just ugh. It's not even about patience, it's just annoying and dragged out. Awful boss. Moving on. Nevin. Some bosses are really bad, but thankfully this isn't one of them. I actually quite like Nevin. Nevin at her core is a very simple boss. Get rid of the bat shields, do damage. So while most bosses in DMC3 focus on some kind of offense, Nevin mostly uses a lot of moves for defense. Take example her lightning. It's a simple to dodge attack, but it's hard to close the distance. For another example, her spin. It doesn't come near you. In fact, it only stays in one spot and doesn't move. Both of these moves show that this boss is about patience rather than skill, and that can be pretty hit or miss for some people. Rival fights tend to be so beloved because the switch from offense to defense all the time is interesting. Here, I don't think that there is a real reason to block in this fight. Even some of her more aggressive moves are in some way protecting her. So as when she shoots her bats or when she's moving around to avoid your attacks. Now, something wasn't making sense the more I thought about this boss. Why is this fight so easy compared to most of the other bosses in this game? Then I watched Zodiac's Die commentary and he said this.
Every attack she has a different voice line and a huge amount of time to prepare. So with some practice she's basically a game of Simon Says. What attack she chooses can be manipulated somewhat based on where you stand relative to her.
And that's when it clicked. Most bosses in this game don't have certain voice lines for certain attacks. Most of them you need to rely on visual stuff. But Nevin not only has an audible attacks that are almost exclusively defense, so as long as you take your time, you're likely to win pretty easily. In fact, this boss is so easy that the spiders that you fight twice in this level are the hardest part of the level, not the boss at the end. An easy boss doesn't make for a bad boss. It's the only real flaw I can point out, is that her kiss at the end is kind of annoying, but I understand wanting to throw a curveball at the end. It's funny that one of the best DMC3 bosses is a boss that doesn't even act like any of the other DMC3 bosses. Beowulf. This boss is DMC3 when it really wants to be a good game. If A&R were about the unique take in the best way, if Vergil 2 is the best rival take, then Beowulf is the take on the classic DMC boss in the best way. Strikes you have to prepare for, faces that you must study, everything plays out how it should expect. But it's in the context of knowing what to do at different times. This boss is almost like a teacher, except this teacher won't sexually assault. It shows you what you need to do the first time, then it will test you on it, and if you do good, you get more damage. No real gimmick to this boss, and I quite like that. If you're good enough, you can maximize your damage nearly all the time. But if you're playing the original, I suggest Royal Guard. Not only can you block the melees, but you need to use it when he uses his wings, because that move is unavoidable without Royal Guard's back input. While there is no gimmick, there is a twist. At a certain point, Beowulf will stay at the distance and throw those... Wait, what are these things again? Whatever. As long as you use your guns, you'll be fine. This is a really good boss, and I wish the average DMC3 boss was like this. Carry on, I think. Oh, let's be honest. This boss sucks. I played this boss multiple times trying to get an S rank, the level this was in, of course, and every time I kept getting hit by the boss, I thought it was just me at first, but the more I played, the more I realized that there is some mad bullshit with this fight. To understand this, we need to understand it piece by piece. The first part of this boss is already off to a bad start. Like, what is the point of this? I shoot and jump to the side, then I keep on doing it to the point where he just gets tired and then I can hit him. So what's the point of this? You can barely get on him since he just teleports, so what's the point of this? The only real strat is to hit him while he's running head on, but in that case, it's just safer to wait. So okay, this part is just stupid. What about the other half? This is where the problems start to get bigger. How do you even get on the carriage right away? Sometimes I get on there easily and start dishing out damage, but sometimes I just hit the carriage and I take no damage. And sometimes I just hit the carriage, but do take damage. And sometimes I don't hit it and I take damage. What is the connection? Nothing. I get it. If I get on the horse, I take damage because it's made of fire. It's a key visual design that lets me know about the boss fight. And sure, the carriage has some spikes on it, but the window can be extremely hard to tell. Even if you're an inch off, you take damage. And this doesn't feel like skill. And you want to know why? Easy. It's the camera's fault. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, DMC3 has a very big issue with its camera going up whenever Dante is up, meaning that the camera will go up every time Dante goes up, not zooming out. Meaning, if you can't see where the carriage is when it drops down, making this fight awful. And sure, practice makes perfect, but the window is so tight and the camera is not helping me and it kills the fight. Then there's the part where the horse will charge up at you like the first phase. But just like the first phase, it gets old really quickly. You are doing the same thing. Then you get to, by far, what is the S rank killer? The Quicksilver. The boss has it and it's ridiculous. It stops you in time, but the boss can easily move. So if you don't have Quicksilver roll guard, good luck. And even if you do, it's still hard to dodge out of the way because you only get one shot. If the animation that Garon plays was playing out near you and is super long, then most of the time you are screwed. If some of you still aren't on board, I want to bring up the main piece of cake, that way you understand. He doesn't shoot Quicksilver, it just appears right beside you. If he shoots it and you could dodge or be aware of it, that would be more fair. But Garon just uses it whenever he's down or casually spawns next to you for some reason. Even if the camera isn't showing it, and yes, I've seen the cheese strat for DMD, but I shouldn't have to use that just to get an S. A cheesable boss fight doesn't suddenly make a great boss fight. In fact, in my view, it breaks them. Look, it's a cool boss idea, but the execution is frustrating, making this boss just quite awful and bad. Vergil 2. Let's be honest, this boss is the best in the game. It's literally not much of a question. To talk about this boss, we need to understand Vergil 1 a little bit more. Vergil is about windows. Windows where Vergil needs to be hit. If you do not understand, you will pay the price. Vergil felt like he understood the assignment the best way he could. But it is still like a robot in execution. The windows are way too easy to spawn, and some of his attacks just don't make sense. For example, his upward slash is used way too often. So how does this connect to Vergil 2? Vergil 2 has much better windows that is hard, yet completely fair. There are few times I get hit and I blame it on the boss. Since Vergil uses Beowulf most of the time, you can prepare for the attacks much better, because Beowulf is slow and a heavy weapon. The other thing that makes this boss interesting is the DT. Giving DT to a boss can be the worst or the best thing, and I'm not talking about DMD DT, I'm talking about DT that actually heals the boss. The pros are that you can feel on equal footing, plus DT really makes you want to lock in and truly go plus ultra. The cons are that it drags out the boss, plus it heals the boss. So how do you make it work? I think it comes down to one factor. Can the boss be hit? It sounds simple, but it's in the details that can make or break. You see, when Vergil 2 goes into DT, you need to make a choice then and there. Do you, 1, stay back and focus on shooting and dodging, or 2, take the risk and hit him, knowing that if you make a mistake, you will take damage. This is really the key of what makes a good rival fight. The only problem with this fight is the same as nearly everything in this game. The camera. If you heard for what I had to say about the stupid horse, you know why it's an issue. Vergil's combos can go on for a while, and jumping in the air is one of the best advantages you have. However, the camera, that Jewish, no, let's not go there. The camera doesn't let you see Vergil, meaning it's extremely hard to tell if he's done attacking or not. But love the detail of him teleporting behind you. Vergil 1 does it, but Vergil 2 actually treats it as a threat, and it adds spice to the fight. Great boss in this game. Okay, we just finished with the best boss in the game. What boss is up next in order? Bro, ain't no way they followed up with this. This is not only a bad boss, not only a filler boss, not only a pointless boss in terms of story, but also the stupidest boss in the entirety of the DMC series. So let's unpack what I just said step by step. This is a bad boss. It's the same reason why Gigabit is a bad boss. Large open rooms where the boss hides. But here, it's worse, because the lock-on won't help you that often. So in baby terms, DMC bosses and enemies need to stand still, or at the very least can be stunned. Why? Why, Splinter? You know, you never say why. You unbelievable Oh my god, that was awful. Editing Splinter, please tell me you bleeped that out. Alright, good. I don't have to worry about spiraling into the next anti-SJW channel. Look, the reason why is that most of the damage you do is through melee weapons. Guns can only take you so far. So having a boss where they are consistently moving and hiding from the player is the dumbest thing this series has come up with so far. The damage from her isn't even that extreme, so when you get hit, you just go, okay, let's just try again. It's this mentality that makes this fight so awful, because she doesn't even attack you directly. Only she attacks off screen, guys. You just have to keep chasing her. It's like trying to rape a... No, I'm not going to make that joke. What is this boss, man? It makes no sense. It's really just the game of patience and not in a fun way like Nevin. Then there's the fact that this is a filler boss. There is no reason we need to do this except for the rocket launcher we get, which we've been getting guns without boss fights anyway. Then there's the fact that this doesn't make sense in terms of story. Demons exist, so the protagonist Dante doesn't like them, they fight. Dante the protagonist doesn't like Vergil, so they fight. Every single boss in this game makes sense, except the one for Lady. She's a human. Dante has no reason to fight her. Then what makes this boss super special? All she has is guns. When we are shown both before and after the fight, bullets don't affect Dante in the slightest way, making it no sense, bro. That did not English right, whatever. With all of this put together, this makes it the dumbest and stupidest boss in the entire series. At least DMC 2 stand still when I fight them. Alright, guys. But guys, Capcom isn't woke because it lets us beat up women. I'm just saying. Doppelganger. Okay, we need to talk about this boss. This is less stupid than Lady, but it's also pretty stupid. You do damage in 3 ways. 1, hit him when he's in the light. 2, deflect his ball. I always sucked at that. 3, hit him when he's in the light. This is a puzzle boss where the gimmick is just to hit him in the light. It's just doing the same thing over and over again, just like Jester. But you can actually hit Jester when he's attacking you. Shadow, the reject over here, exclusively takes damage when he's in the light, meaning you'll play the same formula every time. You'll either wait for him and hit one light, getting some damage in, or hit all the lights and do more damage. But there's no twist, nothing that makes me think, oh, or wow, anything that makes me want to pay attention. It's just a waste of time. I could be reading a book. Okay, I don't know if I'd do that, but yeah, let's go with that. This boss just is really flat, needs far more work. This boss doesn't even feel complete. Arkham. I know I'm the in-depth guy. If you've seen this video so far, you know that I want to tear apart every detail to judge it by its quality. But I really want to make an H-Bomber guy reference. So let's talk about the Arkham fight. It's bad. 3 Vergil. Let's go gambling, guys. Why didn't I make that reference? Oh, you'll see at the end. First, let's talk about the fact that this fight is just so bad compared to 1 and 2. But let me just rant a little bit till I get somewhere. Let's randomly start off with, I don't know, the parries. 3 Vergil can parry and then attack right after. For some reason, I try to jump out of his next attacks, but it won't let me. I swear on all the gods that have ever existed, I am jumping, but Dante is just stuck. The next thing is teleporting. Remember how I liked it in 2? Yeah, 3 Vergil just uses it. All the time. It's a way for him to run all the way across to the other side of the arena whenever he just feels like it. Apparently, someone gave him a copy of Vergil's Downfall because he teleports so much. He teleports on top of you as well. And God forbid you get hit once, because when you do, you will get hit with a huge combo. Oh, also, while we're at it, you better have taken a piece of steak with you and some food and maybe a drink or 2, because this combo takes a long time. By the by, you know what else sucks? The stage. Vergil 1 had a camera zoomed out, so it was easy to tell where everything is. Vergil 2 did have camera issues, but it wasn't the worst of all time because you had a free and open space. 3 Vergil, on the other hand, is far worse. In this arena, we only have a rectangle space. This is a problem because if you're on the side, it's hard to hit Vergil. Why? Because someone on the dev team really wanted to have the floor at an angle. Then you have these pole things that can block your view. I mean, look at this. In that moment, I couldn't see a thing. Oh, the DT. Oh, the DT. You know how I said in the rival fight DT system can break the whole boss? Yep. I mentioned that already. He can downward attack while in DT. I mentioned that, like I said. He can DT attack like normal, of course. But then, for some reason, he has Super Vergil unlocked because I swear he can do it way too often. Then, the worst of all, Vergil can be in DT and just disappear. He can just go off screen and heal himself like a coward. I always call him Cowardly Vergil. Back at it again. You see, it leaves himself open. No, that's not an excuse. Even if you make all that damage, it's still a waste of time. You know that whole choice thing I mentioned about 2's Vergil and 2's DT? Yeah, there's no real choice anymore. You have to pop DT in order to counteract him. Because every second he's alive, he's going to heal. So after all that, what's the takeaway? Easy. It's gambling. You see, everything that I've mentioned so far only happens if Vergil wants it to happen. Meaning, you'll play the hardest boss in the series, or the next try you stop him before he even hits you. And most of the time, it's hard to get to the last one. The footage you're seeing right now is just the footage of me doing it over and over again until I get it. And then at the end, you'll see I got an SS rank. It's not because I'm that good, it's just luck and some skill. I hate this boss. The coward Vergil falls as I look back and see all that I've accomplished. Alright, it's the outro. You know what that means. It's time for Splinter to lay out exactly why the bosses suck. Yet one person will watch the whole section and won't care. Okay. 14 bosses, and that's not counting the other 2 Jester fights. There are 20 levels, and there are 14 bosses. Dog, give it up. DMC3 doesn't need these many bosses. I get it, you want to be like DMC1, but DMC1 was special because it reused boss fights while also adding new mechanics. That's what makes the game unique. DMC3 has too many for this to work. And you know what? The main reason this doesn't work isn't just because of that. It's also the fact that DMC3 has so many gimmicky bosses. Like, seriously, bro. Just put the fries in the bag. I don't want to fight a boss with 3 health bars. I don't want to fight where the boss straight up hides from me. I don't want a boss that runs away from me. I don't want a boss that has only one way to do damage. It's stupid. I've heard so many people talk about how cool DMC3 bosses are in every single video. First, let's talk about the average boss. Okay, let's play this one. Okay, let me hit it. Okay, let's play this boss. Surely it'll let me hit it. Okay, I can't hit that one either. So let me just... Okay, please, let me hit you. Let's try... Where did she go? Finally, a boss I can hit, and this boss where... Wait, come back. I can hit you. No! I'm a little bit of a drama queen, but you get the idea. Nearly every boss wants some kind of gimmick. DMC3 is so afraid of being stale that when it comes to boss fights, they will do nearly everything they can to make it as stupid as possible. I think Beowulf is a good example that DMC3 can have normal boss fights, and it works. Wow, it's like playing into your strengths is a smart thing to do. The only gimmick boss that I really like is Agni and Rudra. Cerberus, Jester, and Nevin all flirt with the idea of having a gimmick, but are mostly traditional bosses. Cerberus can use some more late game tooling, but it's nowhere near bad. Jester is a bit boring, but the later fights defensively change that, even if the bosses seem a bit unnecessary, and Nevin, while being easy, is quite fun. These are some of the better fights in the game, but if DMC3 took the time to work on some of them more, they can end up with classics. Just trim down the fat and focus on the main meal. Then there are rival fights. I even see so many people put Vergil fights in the top fights of all time.
Force Edge creates this whole new moveset you'll have to contend with. Along with him entering Devil Trigger from time to time, halfway through the fight is when all hell breaks loose. With Vergil screaming his head off like a fucking madman, and he starts doing like 4 Houndbreakers in a row, 5 Judgment Cuts in a row, and even a move resembling what would eventually become Judgment Cut N later in the series, where he fills your entire screen with blue JC bubbles.
My Ginger, all those things only happen if Vergil likes it. A few minutes, I explained that Vergil 3 works off of gambling and being greedy when it comes to his health. And that so-called Judgment Cut? That ain't Judgment Cut. That's Judgment Coward. Why? Simple. Judgment Cut is a risk for Vergil where he must stand still and take time to do it, but in DMC 3 he runs away like a little baby and heals off screen. You know what DMC 5 called him? The Alpha and the Omega. But in 3 Vergil's case, it's the bitch boy and the beta. Holy mother of goose, I need to trademark that. But why did I leave a dislike on this video?
This DLC is literally fucking nothing. It was supposed to spawn a sequel for DMC Devil May Cry, and that shit didn't happen, thank God. Honestly though, this is just a huge disrespect to Vergil's character, the legacy that he's built for himself clearly in all of the Devil May Cry series. What the fuck were they even thinking about making this DLC? They should throw this shit in the garbage. They should take every single fucking copy of DLC on the Steam page, on the PlayStation Store, Xbox, wherever the fuck they put this. They should delete it off of the store. They should cyberpunk that shit and just take it off. Put a warning label saying this game fucking sucks, this DLC sucks, everything is garbage.
Oh, I see. So nearly all the other Vergil DLCs that gave only Vergil and nothing else is okay, yet when Ninja Theory makes a DLC under 6-ish months with completely new levels and a new boss fight that's been updated, plus a new mini-boss, plus new enemies, plus new story content, that's not okay and the DLC sucks? Guys, have I ever mentioned that, suicide is my best friend? Yes, Vergil 2 is good, but I don't really care much for 1, and I don't like 3 Vergil because he has so many moves that are just so dumb. The other thing that really connects all these bosses is the use of, 1 or maybe 2 weapons. A lot of bosses can be dealt with 1 and maybe 2 weapons. I can't tell if this was the idea behind the design or if it was a happy accident. ANR are weak against Cerberus so much so that it becomes a literal comedy that no other weapon stands a chance. Cerberus is weak to ANR, Doppelganger is weak to Beowulf, Nevin has 2 weapons that makes the boss completely easy to deal with if you change to Beowulf or ANR for slashes. Even Beowulf is incredibly useful to taking care of the Vergils. I don't even think that Nevin even has a boss that it's weak to. Stuff like this leave me with more questions than answers. In the original, this is mostly fine. 2 weapons is the max you can hold, but in Freestyle, you just stick to 1 or 2 weapons instead of thinking outside the box. Look, there are some cool bosses in here, but most of the game's bosses are either pointless or stupid. Yeah, Vergil is cool sometimes, but we need to think about realistically how the game's actual bosses are. DMC 3 has a problem with its bosses, and I'm tired of pretending it's not. We need to wake up and understand that most of the other games in the series have better bosses than this game. It's at the bottom of the list by DMC 2. So the next time you think of a DMC 3 boss that has the best bosses or another video blah 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 that says something like that, think to all the bosses, then make your decision. Oh, by the way, finally, now that we have some time, guys, let's talk about the Arkham fight. Oh, we're not doing that. In this section, we'll be talking about guns. The guns can actually make or break a DMC game. Guns help make the connection between each of the weapons. Moreover, the range is key. Melee weapons do just that, melee. Range isn't that much of a strength. So, let's look over the iconic Ebony and Ivory, the interesting shotgun that fills its role, the cute and lovable Spiral, the weird Artemis and funny controls, and finally, the most powerful and quite useful Colleen Ann. Let's start off with Ebony and Ivory. This is the most iconic gun in the game easily, and it's not even a question, or guns, whatever. Point being is that they are almost the go-to in any kit. Even if we're not counting Gunslinger, it's the perfect default to range situations. Moreover, it can also be used to cancel with other guns. You get it from the beginning to the end. Then, on top of this, Gunslinger makes this weapon a beast. Or weapons, whatever. Being able to use crowd control with this type of weapon makes it stick out. Not only that, but it's worth noting how quickly this works. Most things in this game take some time to execute. Heavy attacks take longer, and I'm sure you know this, but the reason I point out is the speed in which Ebony and Ivory have. Seriously, the instant you press the button, you are already shooting. Think about that, just for a second. Spiral, Kalina, and even the Shotgun's gunslinger moves all take some amount of time to execute. This is why E&I is such a good pick. It's not only easy to understand, but perfect for nearly every scenario. Putting speed and damage together, you get why this gun is so good. I say this so far, and I'll say it again. Gunslinger really was one of a kind in this game versus how in every other game after. The one thing I don't like too much is Rainstorm. It's not bad, but it's just kind of short, and its effectiveness is kind of, a bit useless. Overall, this weapon is great. It's fast, it's powerful, and if you ask me, it's the best gun in the game. Shotgun. Alright, the shotgun. The damage zone for the FPS. Shotguns have always been in the DMC series in one way or the other, even back in DMC 1. But why is this? I think the simple answer is the fact that the shotgun is best at close range, simply because of the fact that most of the time you want to be near your enemies. So how does this game execute this? Mostly well. Let's go down the list from the basic shots to the special moves. The normal shot is self-explanatory. However, the shot in the air is extremely quick, so it can be jump cancelled for maximum damage, if you're good of course. Then there is also the charge. I think the charge compared to E&I is pretty weak. The charge only works for 2 shots. As soon as that goes up, it goes back to normal. Honestly, it makes more sense to have 3 shots because E&I and the charge shot multiple times is in such a quick pace, while old man Gunslinger over here can barely do 2. But it's not the worst. Next up is Fireworks. This is a great move to give you more space, covering you for blowback damage to protect you. Not only that, but it's pretty good in the air. Personally, I've always loved DMC Devil May Cry's Fireworks since it can back up the enemy, but also keeps the enemy in the air. Then there is Gunstinger. It's cool and all, but I think it could be better. The mashing stuff at the end, but I kinda seen this move done better in DMC 5. In DMC 5, I can actually cancel or roll out of it, while in DMC 3, I have to commit to it. But not a bad move. The perfect purpose is different than the execution. The purpose being to use close-up range, but most of its moves are to simply keep enemies away. So, is it any good from that standpoint? I mean, it's pretty good. It doesn't blow me away.
Get it? It's a shotgun?
Just you wait, I plan to use that exact joke for Kalina Ann. Anyway, yeah, it's good, could be better. Spiral. Spiral is up next. Honestly, the way to describe this weapon is adorable. I've had a soft spot for this gun for a long time. Yes, you can't shoot it in the air, and yeah, it's not always the best for crowd control, but I really like this weapon. So let's start off with the main fire. The main fire is not only powerful, but has a long range. I mean, it's a sniper rifle. Doesn't look like one to me. Weirdest sniper rifle I've ever seen. But anyway, the main shot isn't super impressive, but it does work if you need power and range. It's just very bad at shooting back to back, unless you have royal guard by chance. But this is where Gunslinger steps in. There is also a move with Spiral that lets Dante shoot the gun in the air, only for it to bounce around like the crackheads you see on TV. This is perfect for crowd control, though it is a bit random, so it's not a replacement for your crowd control weapons. It's just a nice alternative. Then there is the big shot you can do now. By holding the Gunslinger forward, Dante does a massive strike in one shot. It takes a long time, but it's worth it. So what if my homie can't shoot in the air? On the ground, it's peak. It's also a bit of a hidden weapon, which makes it extra special. It doesn't have any charge, because I don't need to charge, Slay Queen, and smite your enemies. Anyway, real talk. Yeah, this weapon's good. It certainly is. The drawback is that you can't shoot in the air, but the crowd control and the power is nearly unmatched. It could use maybe 1 or 2 moves for the sake of combos, but aside from that, Spiral is peak. Artemis. Artemis is used in a lot of combo meds, so is it any good? The answer is a bit mixed. Well, first, it isn't like a normal gun. Sure, you can shoot, but without charge, it's like hitting low-tier God with an insult.
And let me tell you what I see, Richard Samuel. I see a fat ass nigga with headphones. Probably if you pulled out your cock, it would smell like nachos that's been sitting in the hot summer sun all day. while you're sitting here in another man's stream at 11:38 trying to figure out what I do to get this paper. How about you focus on your diet, you fat ass, need to do keto ass, balding, fucked up genetics ass, and worry about how to stop your midsection from fucking protruding from fats and greases, you bloated, stinking, worthless, basic.
So you need to charge it. So how does it charge? The charge shooting multiple enemies is via the gun button, but shooting multiple strikes at one enemy is done by holding the style button. Now I think you might see the appeal. How do you do it is a bit problematic. Charge shooting multiple times is by holding the gun button. However, the other charge is by holding the style button down. Do you see the issue? In my button layout, it's extremely hard to hit both the charge and any other button, to be honest. So you might say, skill issue, that's a personal thing. And to that I say, it is. However, there is something you're not accounting for. The average DMC player is going to have the style button on one of the face buttons, and nearly every player will. That's just how the game is buried in our brains. Most DMC players will put the gun button on one of the back buttons because it would be easier to charge that, something that you need in DMC 3, DMC Devil May Cry, sometimes 5, and maybe 4. So yeah, it is a bit of an issue. However, the rest of the kit makes up for it. With the laser back or forward input with Gunslinger, pushes the enemies, and it can even make it rain like a Diddy party. All this put together means that this gun could be better, but it's still quite good. I just wish I didn't have to charge for the style button to make that move happen. Lena Ann. This gun is a bit popular for this game, so much so that it returned in DMC 5. Is that justified? Well, kinda. You see, this is a rocket launcher, and that alone is the reason why it's so important. While the shotgun has some good crowd control, Kalina Ann is the only weapon to have good crowd control. Not only that, but the power of the gun is unmatched, doing a wave of damage when fired. So what are the drawbacks? Well, it only really has two, and one of them is up for debate. It is has very little range. It can not go too far. Not only that, but you can't fire it in the air. So, okay, what's the one up for debate? You maggot? Okay, bro hit me with a 1910 insult. The debatable one is range, simply because of the fact that Kalina Ann has two gunslinger moves that makes up for this, such as a hook and a tracking missiles that can go pretty far. So this weakness in the kit is a bit undershadowed. This weapon really isn't complex, but it does have some good tools that make the gun overall interesting as a result. I still can't overlook how the hook works, and the track missiles add so much spice to the kit. Guys, one thing you have to know. I didn't make the pun from before about blowing you away. Oh guys. Overall, I love the guns in this game. I wish Kalina Ann and Spiral can shoot into the air, but aside from that, I love the guns. Each has a purpose in some way. In fact, Freestyle really brought this to my attention. In the original, it was always weird to find a spot for the guns. A good example of this is Artemis. If you don't have Gunslinger, you'll never really know the full potential of the weapon, because there are only 5 styles to choose from and they're all competing. So the guns don't get as much love as they deserve. I can understand why. The guns feel like a must-need in Freestyle. While I don't believe in the strong argument for all 5 weapons being a must-need, I do truly believe that the guns feel 10 times better with all 5. It's not a must as much as the styles or melee weapons, but the guns could really use it. DMC 3 has great guns. I just wish more of these weapons could return. I like to think that what makes these guns work is Freestyle and Gunslinger. Without these two things, the guns just don't feel the same. All the best weapons in the wrong game. Alright, let's take a break from all the analysis and let's do a response. We'll spice the video up a bit. And again, just like my DMC3 remake and my Vergil sections, this section was seen weeks ago on the second channel. You may say, hey, this section doesn't make sense to be put in this type of video. And to that I say, yeah. Yeah. But you can't do a thing about it. With all of the shilling out of the way, I found a video not too long ago called How Dante Got His Groove Back, and the thumbnail says, what makes him so likable? I wanted to respond to this video, not just because I disagree with it, but because I see this as a larger issue I want to make an example of. At the end, I hope that you almost question how you see DMC's Dante. This isn't a Lucid Enigma video, you know. Can I beat DMC3 with my dick out? And enter the thumbnail with something red in it. Of course, don't harass the guy. He has more subs than me, but that doesn't mean bullying's okay, guys. Only on certain occasions. Only when they're smaller than...
Back in 2003, Dante and the Devil May Cry name had been dethroned from its heroic status that Devil May Cry 1 had instilled from the word go. The development team Capcom Studio 1 were in dire need of a success if they were to stay afloat.
We are less than 40 seconds in and you've already made a big mistake. DMC3 was in development before DMC2 came out. There is a lot of people that think DMC2 was a critical mistake and they plan to make up for it with DMC3. But DMC3 was planned to be a big change in the series before 2 even came out. Insuno could have overhauled DMC2 to be a different game, but he didn't want to do that. DMC2 came out the way not only because of its development history, but because Insuno didn't want to save it. History was already made when Insuno was given the freedom for the DMC series. And by the by, Capcom wasn't in need of a quote-unquote dire need of success. DMC2 sold well. Bro, we aren't even a minute in.
It fixed many of the shortcomings both those initial titles just weren't able to achieve, and raised the bar for what a character action game, or a hack and slash game, or whatever buzzword for action games should feel and look like.
Okay, now come on. The level design, the enemy design, the camera, all these things DMC1 did better. And I know you showed a bit of footage of Bayo 1, which is good because if you played both of these games, Bayo 1 is easily better.
To compensate for how bastardized Dante's image had become. And my oh my, could I have not been more happier for a drastic character change.
Damn, we're not even trying to hide it anymore. First, DMC1 and DMC2 can be connected. DMC2 Dante was a look at Dante when he's at his lowest point, where the facade drops. Even the anime goes out of its way to show us this. There is still room for growth and good writing, but DMC3 and all the games after it threw it away. Second, I'm glad you're honest, because it's okay when DMC3 radically changes the character because he rides a rocket and stuff, but that's unacceptable when DMC Devil May Cry does it, but still clearly being influenced by past Dantes and having a really good arc. When Dante radically gets changed in 3, he quote-unquote gets his groove back, but when DMC Devil May Cry Dante does it, he gets called Dante. Alright, cool, at least you're honest.
This was all possible through Ruben Langdon's killer performance, providing the definitive Dante voice, and even performing the mocap for the character.
Okay, buddy. First, Dante's voice, as you call it, is only in DMC3. In DMC4 and 5 and the anime, he sounds different. And second, Ruben isn't the only Dante. There has been Dantes before him, and there has been Dantes after. Also, by the way, can we just talk about how weird the DMC3 voice is? He sounds like this. Look. No wonder this guy looks so funny today. Bro, he sounds like a 90s bully.
Likeable as Dante in DMC1 was set out to be, he could come off as wooden in his delivery at times, or just an overtly cheesy cornball.
I'm his son, Dante. Sweet dreams.
Guys, DMC1 Dante is getting the DMC Devil May Cry treatment. You know, the whole playing the cutscene without actually explaining why it's a bad thing? And also, the fuck's your lot? Cornball? Huh? He was on point as Dante. Fuck you mean cornball. Each of his lines not only landed, but are extremely quotable. Are we gonna forget the flock off, or the start of the jackpot saying? And something just occurred to me as soon as I wrote the last line. Corny is a tone. Edgy is also a tone. You see where I'm going with this? DMC Devil May Cry Dante gets called edgy, even though that's not a criticism, but a tone. He's calling DMC1 Dante bad because he's corny. Tone can't be good nor bad. I'm sorry, DMC1 Dante. F's in the chat for DMC1. He's getting the DMC Devil May Cry treatment. Pray for him.
The newcomers could be sweating bullets. Dante's swagger vicariously infects a sense of confidence in the player's demeanor, encouraging a more aggressive playstyle because, let's face it, it's a dog-eat-dog world out there.
I mean, that's a lot of video game protagonists. Being angry and aggressive character is normal for most violent games with protagonists.
When Dante's serious side takes effect, it makes you that much more glued in on the situation, that if this guy is taking this situation seriously, then your attention probably shouldn't be diverted either.
Oh, this Dante? You know the same one that was having a blast when Dante saw a lady's father die? Same Dante, right?
Because he was Nilo Angelo in DMC1, but this prequel will show how that misfortune transpires, And it's really cool to see the brothers' dynamic and relationship develop and unfold, because Dante seems entirely unaffected reuniting with his corrupted brother once again in the first game.
We hear the flashback. We see it in DMC 2. Dog, I get it. It's not exactly, we don't have multiple scenes about it, but that's because DMC 1 only has a total of 40 minutes of cutscenes, and Vergil's death happens at the very end of it.
Through all the trials and tribulation Dante faces, he starts to mature and come into his own, seeing the bigger picture and what his destiny has laid out for him.
Oh, you mean the arc that only happens near the end of the game, unlike DMC Devil May Cry, where he's developing all the time? Outro. Alright, that was quick, but I think it comes across with the issue that I have with how DMC's Dante is looked at. Did you see the thumbnail? You can tell that he's off with the wrong track, actually. 1. Likeable isn't what makes a good character. I've used it on my wall, but likeable isn't what makes a good character at all. Let pass Splinter explain it from my ultimate defense of DMC Devil May Cry video. Alright, so apparently people need to be reminded that this exists. It says, great characters should be dimensional, fascinating, believable, compelling. Alright, let's look at false goods. Likeable, relatable, sympathetic. Sounds innocent, but can ruin storytelling. Note, these can be okay, but are most often misused. This is from the main writer of Avatar: The Last Airbender. I think this guy was onto something. 2. Notice what's in the thumbnail. It's not Dante's awakening, it's not his fight with Vergil, it's not the end of the story, it's him riding a rocket. I'm not saying that this is a bad thumbnail, it just shows the priorities of Dante riding a rocket in the intro is very important to him. Skrilly DVG, okay, isn't going to explain anything about his arc, his backstory, or complexity. It's all about, wow, he rode a rocket! Woo! This can be seen even more with his thoughts on DMC 1 Dante. His problem with 1 Dante isn't about backstory, the complexity, or the arc, it's that he's corny. Thanks. That's really helpful, buddy. I wanted to show this video because this is how most of the community sees Dante. It's not about the actual quality of the character, it's just that the character does cool stuff. Same issue with Vergil. So many people like 3 Vergil over DMC Devil May Cry Vergil is because he's quote-unquote cooler, even though DMC 5 Vergil took a great amount of influence from DMC Devil May Cry's version of the character. Even small things like saying, I'm glad for a massive change of the character. Yeah, dude, I could really tell. The community's take on the characters in these games is extremely whacked, and I hope that more of you actually open up your eyes a little bit, and I hope this video has at least somewhat done that. If it hasn't, I'll go fuck myself then. This has been Splinter, and I'm out of this bitch. Intro. If the styles are the booty cheeks of the core gameplay, then the devil arms are the breast of the combat. Who wrote that in the script? How the hell am I going to explain this to my kids? Whatever, fuck the kids. Let's talk about Devil Arms of DMC 3. In this section, I'll be going over all of them. Rebellion, the iconic weapon. Cerberus, the fantastic, yet not all-around use. Beowulf, the broken weapon. Agni Rouge, the strange weapon that never falls into a category. And Nevada? I always say it wrong, man. The weapon that's so experimental, it might be ahead of its time. I'll tell you what I think when the section is near completion. Let's talk about Rebellion. Let's start off with Rebellion. It's one of the things that has mostly stayed the same throughout the series. This weapon is mostly a neutral weapon, not too much power or crowd control. It's meant to be a bridge for the players for other weapons, to balance things out in the way that they should. This is also a big influence on the rest of the game, for weapons in this way. Here's an example. When we see a move that launches Dante towards the enemy, we go, oh, that's X weapon stinger move. When we launch enemies, we say, wow, that's X weapon's high time. Even if you don't know the exact names, your brain knows what type of moves that is for every other weapon. That's how important Rebellion is. Due to this, Rebellion is needed in every game. Anytime you pick up a DMC game, you expect Rebellion. Even in DMC 5, where they replaced it, it still keeps most of its moveset. It's a stamp for DMC. The Swordmaster moves, not so much. I don't get me wrong, I love the air movement, and it's almost a staple of Swordmaster. Being able to use air moves and doing other stuff with Rebellion, that's pretty cool. It's perfect for air combos, and using gun capsules helps, and the spin is amazing. I don't know if it's the look of it or the function or both, the spin move is really good. It's a way to shoot the enemy up without lifting yourself. But you can already do that, you might say. But prop can actually launch or do extra damage. But throwing the sword is a bit weird and doesn't really have a place. In the original, I suggest not doing that. But in Freestyle, because you have so many weapons, it really doesn't matter. Then again, you have gunslingers, so why not just shoot them? And the automatic combo is just really cheap, and I don't think it's something this game should encourage. I don't like this in any of the DMC games. It should be added to the combos via combos, like it usually does. But because it takes one input to start, it's just kind of there to sit to do cool stuff sometimes. That too, and it's unnecessarily long. Overall, a good weapon. One that made an impact on the series. Most people will use this weapon for a very long time. Cerberus. Aw yeah, Cerberus is slowly becoming one of my favorite weapons. Not only is Cerberus nearly perfect, it also is one of the best weapons in the DMC series, hands down. This all comes down to how Cerberus works. Cerberus is a crowd control weapon, the first that you get. It is designed around hurting multiple enemies at once. The basic moves have a decent range. The lock-on forward hits a ton of enemies and can shield you from attacks, and can keep enemies in the air for certain combos. It is a great move. The lock-on back move is basically a small breather, mostly to focus on an enemy to spice up your kit in a way. The air movement is fantastic, it's quick and effective, so this move can be used no matter if you have Swordmaster equipped or not. Speaking of Swordmaster, the Swordmaster moves are superb. The extra move and the ground version of the control over the area and enemies. One that puts you in some type of ice ball, mostly a defense move, and ice that launches enemies into the air. All great stuff. Great for doing combos, great for crowd control, great weapons for canceling for other moves. Near everything is great. God, I hope they bring it back and not ruin it. However, Cerberus isn't the best in every situation, which is good. Each weapon should have a weakness, and for this Devil Arm, it's damage. Cerberus doesn't have that much damage in the same way Beowulf, A&R, or even Rebellion does. So the best way to use this weapon is not just crowd control, but also speed. This is why Trickster works so well with this weapon. Moreover, air combat with Cerberus is pretty great as well. I do wish I could roulette in the air like in DMC 5, but it's not a deal breaker. Air movement feels great with this weapon. You can either get stronger with each hits, or like a stronger first hit, or you can use a kind of a faster slash type movement. Now, back to another weakness of the weapon. While the crowd control is good, it's not far. Nevin, for example, can hit way more enemies in a larger range, while Cerberus is limited by what it can do. So you need to be in a close distance for it to be effective. But not every weapon should be good at everything. Even the spam combo is great. Dante even makes karate noises. Anyway, overall, Cerberus is a great weapon. One I wish could return in DMC 4 and DMC Devil May Cry and 5.
We don't talk about King Cerberus.
Beowulf. The punches have been in the series since the first game, no doubt leaving an impact on the game, leading it to be one of the most powerful and best damage weapons around. Nothing can compare. Like I've said about Beowulf in my All Gauntlets video, the sole reason why this weapon works is because of the damage. The real impact is a timeless move, and the combos with it are powerful. But most importantly, it can be added onto with extra moves. Then you also have moves that shake the very ground itself with a large attack below. The air moves are important. The power move is of course powerful and even more damaging with the knowledge of how to use it. But the dive kick is very important. There is literally nothing in the game that moves you in a directional angle, except for the kick with Dante without a sword. But aside from that, it is the most important thing, and it's really, really important for the last boss. I used it a lot, and it helps me get into key points where I can do damage. The mobility is a bit lacking, but when you have power and range, it's not much of a problem. I still have no reason why there is a laser move. It doesn't make sense for the weapon or gameplay wise, but honestly, it's a bit more just for damage. This weapon is fast as well. Unlike games in the future, Beowulf doesn't need that much time to charge to do a lot of damage. But that's just the beginning. The moves are also quite good. Rising Dragon can be good as a powerful launch. If you simply tap it, you shoot the enemy up, but if you hold, you can shoot multiple enemies up and do more damage. And it's all up to you. The Stinger is quite good as well, with a strike that you can hold and wait for the charge, and then it can hit multiple enemies at a time. And that's something I also want to mention. The size of the attack of Beowulf is crazy, as the Slop channel would say. The size of the attack is charged is way too forgiving. Anything in the general direction of forward gets destroyed in a fast manner. And we're not even done yet. Did I even mention all the Swordmaster moves? Because you have crowd control and real impact, which if timed correctly is the most insane thing. Maybe Rising Dragon kind of counters that a little bit, but they're still up there. Okay, let's back up for a second. It's good, but isn't it a little too good? That's my actual biggest problem with this weapon. This isn't like a royal guard situation where it's hard to use, yet once mastered, it can be very powerful. Beowulf is just stupidly broken. It has range, crowd control, speed, and damage. I love Cerberus because it's not a weapon that you can use all the time, but Beowulf is just too powerful. I see why a lot of S-rank videos use it, because why not? Because why use multiple weapons when Beowulf has everything you need? Anyway, yeah, it's a good weapon, but a little too good. It needs to be nerfed a bit. In fact, this has to be the best gauntlet weapon we've ever seen in the series so far, which is a scary thought. So yeah, too good, but not poorly designed weapon, but still. But, wait, still guys, let's back up for a second. Why is there a laser move? I never understood. Agni and Rudra. Yeah, A and R are the two most powerful weapons and the most iconic weapons in this game. But does that make it good? Well, to be honest, there is a lot of give and take. A&R do a lot of everything. It has moves for crowd control, but also has some heavy moves. This can be seen through its Swordmaster moves and Combo 3, gathering a large amount of enemies. There is also speed in his kit as well, with the Jetstream, Melee, and the Swordmaster attacks. Not only that, but it has a lot of good air moves, making it really good for mid-air combos. So with all of this, where do we even begin to start? Let's judge by its category. It is, after all, a heavy weapon. So, is it powerful? Then we'll circle back to the other stuff. Power with this weapon is, to be honest, kind of mid. Sure, it may do more damage than the light weapons, but it's just not as, well, frankly, it's just as powerful as Rebellion. Now, when it comes down to Swordmaster moves, other than the basic attack, they are for some version of crowd control. But maybe this is to account for the speed. So the weapon is fast. I mean, sort of. The speed is there, but it just doesn't feel the same as it could be. Look at Jetstream, for example. It's Stinger, just like most weapons, but it's slower and kind of clunky. It would make up for it if you can control it mid-animation, but it only sometimes does that. So it's faster than the heavy weapons, but slower than the light weapons. So maybe it's a crowd control weapon, right? Sure, if you're at the end of combo 1 or 3, or maybe Twister and Cross Swords, but Twister is the only real one that gives you any necessary crowd control. But even then, it's more for air juggling. I'm sorry, but crowd control is weak with this weapon, so maybe this weapon is for air combat. And that's where you think you might be onto something. Because the air moves are really great, and some of the best in the game, because of how you can JC and how long you can stay in the air. So let's recap. The speed is a bit poor and isn't that fast. The power is a bit underwhelming because its damage just isn't that high, and the crowd control isn't good at grasping a lot of enemies. But the airtime is good. Honestly, the more I think about it, and the more that I try and understand it, it's literally just Rebellion 2. Think about it. It's not much of a heavy weapon, but it has power. It's not much of a light weapon, but it has some crowd control and speed. And even the air time in Whirlwind is basically the same thing as high time. It's there to simply fill the role. But looking at the weapon overall, I think it needs to be re-examined. Give it more power, more speed. Not a bad weapon, just poor in execution. I think an example of this entire weapon is its Stinger. Just look at this. I still have no idea why this game is like this in this scenario. It's way too slow to get the enemy. Like, look at this. Dante, no, Dante, the enemy's over there. This happens pretty often, and worse yet, you're not protected. Meaning if you run to the right of the enemy, you're getting hit, buddy. So overall, this weapon just needs to be better reason to be a weapon. It's not the worst devil arm in the game, but it does fall short. But man, its air combat is hella fun. Nevin, welcome ladies and gentlemen to the strangest crowd control weapon you've ever seen. Not only that, but Nevin overall is a weapon at war with itself. And in this section, I'm going to tell you why. Let's start off with the first half. When you get volume up, you are given bats that surround you with bats. A good example of this is the back and also the forward input, which gives you both a defense and offense package. When the bats surround you, it can protect you from oncoming damage. If you use it against enigmas, you'll understand, since the bats come directly where you're standing, giving you almost a shield. Offense-wise, it gives you an attack, either to knock the enemies in the air or to charge straight at them. With these, your stingers with Nevin can rarely be hit. Think about it, every weapon stinger comes with a risk that you might be hit, but because of the backs, I've never been knocked out of my stingers in most modes, simply because the bats will knock back the enemy or the bats will protect my recovery. So that's cool and all, but what about the other moves? Right, about that. Yeah, this weapon has weird inputs. You see, there is a normal back and forward input, however, there is also now a left and a right input. Each do completely different things. One knocks enemies back, or the other one builds up a large crowd control attack. And the left and the right during the battle is super hard to understand. You see, forward and back can be easily identified by knowing where Dante is, just forward or the opposite of the enemy. But left and right when the camera isn't showing Dante's back is extremely hard to tell. It'll take you time to realize how to put the input in, and it might even take you a few seconds. But this is a fast game where every second counts. I feel like this already messes with the potential of the weapon. Then we get to the weapon that comes with some more challenges, aka Nevin's other half. Swordmaster moves completely add something different to the weapon. Now Nevin slashes the enemy, plus it has a spin and a charge attack that does a lot of damage. Okay, let's address this one bite at a time. The main attack is really slow. Like, did the devs get the memo? It's a crowd control weapon. It's light and fast, not slow and risky. Seriously, Agni and Rudra attack faster. I do like the spin. That's cute. It's fast and it's a crowd control move. And how the weapon should be, and again with the charge. This isn't a Beowulf move. Stop copying other weapons. So if you've listened so far, I wish they stuck to the concept of the bats, where the weapon doesn't touch upon the enemy directly. Funny enough, this reminds me of Lucifer, where it's an odd concept for a weapon, but it goes with it. However, I still rather Nevin because while I may wait a little bit longer to attack, I don't have to spam and then self-detonate every time, even though Lucifer has more weapon potential. But the slashes don't make any sense to me. Overall, Nevin is a weird weapon, maybe the weirdest in the series, but it does have potential. If brought back and maybe got a rework, this could be a really great and unique weapon. Before setting it off, I do want to mention two things. One, after playing a lot of Freestyle, out of all the weapons I've used, Nevin is the least I've used. I just could never find a moment or a time in his kit to work with it. I do think that it's a good effort though, even if it's extremely flawed. And two, Nevin's DT can fly. I don't know where to put that in the script, so there you go. Outro. So while these weapons might have flaws, I really enjoy these devil arms. This collection is my favorite in the series. If I said before, I'm going to say that again. I wish these weapons were in a better game. In order to play these awesome weapons, I have to go through all the game's issues. Like, seriously, put them in 5. And DMC Devil May Cry. I would kill for... Okay, not King Cerberus. I want the OG. Even though I have some hard words to say about Nevin and Agni and Rudra, I would love to see them return, but tweak just a little bit. I said a little bit. DMC3 has many faults, but your arsenal is truly amazing. And now, let's take a break from the sections to see how Splinter is doing on his old computer. I need a new PC, oh my god. This is not working. This is not okay. I only have one tab open. Why is my CPU about to die? What is it loading? Grand Theft Auto? Wow, truly enlightening. Anyway, back to the original video, sorry. Okay, in this section we're going to do something a bit radical. In this section we're going to go and talk exclusively about the non-freestyle version of DMC3, aka the regular DMC3 Special Edition. However, I've played this version a lot, like I may have already mentioned, but I just don't like this version of the game over freestyle. Everything just feels wrong. In fact, most, if not all of this footage will be from Mission 1 and 2. But in this section, let's talk about the loadouts you can do. DMC 3, SE, OG. Man, we're just going to forget about that. Pretend you didn't hear that, okay? I'll go over each style and review their loadout. I will put the weapons in 3 spots. The highest will be that they work really well, the middle being okay or average, the lowest being it doesn't work too well. We'll talk about Quicksilver and Doppelganger at the end. Loadout 1, Trickster. I know people like to hate on this loadout, but I think it's pretty good for getting started. Do you have a tight focus on the enemy in front of you? Cerberus is a bit wider, but it generally doesn't have a lot of crowd control at a distance. And everybody knows how Rebellion works, launch, stinger, you know. But because of this, there are little to no moves. The only one you've got is the normal attack. However, Trickster makes up for this with a teleport and 3 dashes, making getting in or getting out really fast, really helpful. Over time, this will sink in. What will also sink in is the lack of damage. So your only saving grace will probably be the shotgun or the rocket launcher. So my suggestion is to zip in and out using the shotgun in the air. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention how good that was. Like I've mentioned, the shotgun does have the most damage / knockback, and Trickster gives you a lot of mobility even in the air, meaning your dash in the air back and forth with a shotgun, which is kind of, you know, a deadly combo. So, time to add everything up. The positives are that Dante moves fast, easy to pick up and learn, if trained well, will lead you to take less damage. Trickster with the shotgun is a deadly combo. Negatives: not a lot of crowd control, not a lot of damage, limited in firearms, not a lot of depth, little to no air combos, doesn't do well against bosses. So overall, Trickster is good for light weapons, such as Cerberus is fast and has crowd control, Rebellion is good for setups, and Nevin with kind of stands still in some ways, so the fast-moving Trickster helps. Power weapons such as A&R and Beowulf isn't great with this kit. While Beowulf is somewhat fast, it can still be a bit risky. On the gun side of things, Ebony and Ivory is always a good pick, along with the shotgun. The other good one would be the rocket launcher, which can fill that much needed gap of damage you might need. Spiral and Artemis, not that great of a pick. A good kit to get started off with, but most people play with this kit aren't getting the full game, but aren't wrong in liking this playstyle. It's simply effective, but that's about it. However, it does have its issues, but it shouldn't be overlooked. This kit should mostly be temporary. Loadout 2, Swordmaster. I love this kit. This is one of my own doing. I've tried it with Royal Guard, but it doesn't feel right. But with Swordmaster, it feels perfect. I basically thought of the idea of, what if I take crowd control weapons with a power weapon? What would happen? And I got my answer. So just in short, how I'll explain it is that I'll show you how I use it. When I charge Nevin, a storm of bats surrounding you, and Beowulf, you need time to charge for your full power of attack. This means that you can use the bats and shield yourself against the attack, making your attacks super damage heavy, making it one of the best kits in the game. And Swordmaster, you can even do even more damage. It is great. I'm not even touching the surface, not to mention with all the air combos are great. The only problem is that the mobility needs some work, and the guns don't do their jobs as well as some other weapons, and yes, it does take a while to get used to, but it has a lot of depth. Positives: does a lot of damage if used well. Crowd control, great. Air combos, lots of depth. Negatives: little mobility, the guns have little use, and takes a while to get used to it. The equipment is really great. I love this kit. This combo tends to be the most different from the rest of the combinations I've tried, but there are still more to go over. Rebellion is great for this kit, air combos and more. Cerberus works great, and honestly the best part of Swordmaster is the fact that any weapon really that you have is quickly expanded upon with Swordmaster. So this works with almost every weapon in some way because of this style. I think this is why Swordmaster is one of the best styles in the game, honestly. And same as usual goes for guns, as the last style. Loadout 3, Gunslinger. Gunslinger is a bit of a weird one. I like it, but in this format of 4 weapons, 1 style, it's a bit hard to get used to, or hard to get right. You must always be charging or dynamically slowing down your effectiveness of gameplay. It's not the best, but it is good once mastered. Positives: high damage, good crowd control, mid to high range, can be good for defense. Negatives: need to charge, not good at close range, can be bad for defense. Rebellion is the most part good, but you need to pick up an extreme if you're going to be playing Gunslinger. Cerberus and Agni Rudra work well because of the speed that each has. Nevin feels off, of course, because needing to stand in one place most of the time is not good for that, and good for stingers, but everything else is really slow because of that stiff movement. Beowulf is okay, but needs more crowd control. Because of Gunslinger, every gun can be toyed with, but E and I are still the best in this game, and it's hard not to have it in your kit if you want to play well with it. Loadout 4, Royal Guard. This one is quite weird, but all dangerous. With Royal Guard, the real threat is learning the timings. Once you've done that, the gates of hell open. The only problem with this style is the waiting. Once you've learned it, you want to do it all the time. But some enemies just don't feel like attacking you, making the whole battle take like a weird break. There is also the issue of crowd control weapons. Since control weapons are mostly to be used defensively, Royal Guard fills that role already. Why use Nevin's bats to go around me when I could just, block? Positives: does a lot of great damage if used well, great defense, cancels for faster movement, tons of depth. Negatives: takes a while to use and to get right, little mobility. Rebellion is okay, but not great. Agni and Rudra and Beowulf are great picks for damage. Like I said, Nevin and Cerberus don't feel that good. And the gun-wise, the spiral cancels are cool, but the guns don't really change all that much. Outro. So after all that, what do we have? Well, the idea of a loadout isn't something new here, but here it really does feel its age. Some of the loadouts work far better than others, and because of this, the weapon feels like it must fit into a puzzle piece to work, yet the shape of it doesn't fit. I wish it was like Bayo 1, where every weapon slot feels so good because of the amount of moves that they have, but even if there are only 4 weapons at a time, versus in 3, for example, Rebellion doesn't have an air move. It just goes down, and that's a whole air combo potential simply cut from you simply because you chose a style that wasn't Swordmaster. And this is where Quicksilver and Doppelganger struggle. The fact is that the other 4 styles have much more to work with than the sub-styles. The best way to describe it is to have each part of DMC3 vying for attention. Not in a good way, well, actually, more like fighting each other for each a very important spot that in the end hurts each other. The style choice isn't a bad idea, it just needs far more work to be much better. After playing Freestyle, there's a lot that needs to be said and only so much time to say it, so I'll just keep writing until I can make sense of it. In my first stream, I mentioned how I think Freestyle can fix 3 things about DMC3. 1, the enemies, 2, weapons potential, and 3, difficulty. It only really changes 1. First, the enemies still suck. Having options doesn't matter when the enemy can just clip through walls or are invincible. So yeah, that sucks. However, weapon potential is great as expected. Being able to use 5 melee weapons, 5 ranged weapons, and 6 styles really changes up the combo options. I think a good way to explain this is like this. Let's say I choose Gunslinger. Most of the time I need to stand at range, that way no one will hit me. You're kind of stuck in one spot. With Freestyle, you almost are never in a bad position that you can't get out of. Unless it's the camera or the enemies covering your vision. But beside from that, no longer limited like that. Now, the power is in your hands, and the same can be applied with the guns and devil arms. I'll circle back to this later. The last one is difficulty, and it feels mostly the same. I really thought this would change, but it doesn't seem to be in that case. In fact, in terms of difficulty, my playthrough in the OG version and Freestyle felt mostly the same. Bosses were still annoying, I died a good amount of times, there's nothing new to be expected here. So this version doesn't fix all the past issues with the past version. It feels better, don't get me wrong, but if you're looking at a game for style switching stuff outside of style switching, you're going to be a bit surprised. Okay, so how does it feel? This is probably one of the biggest questions around this version, since most people don't have a Switch or a PC with mods, so they just think it's better. Which yes, is true to an extent, but there is a lot of ways to improve the combat. So I want to put this in easy translatable words, that way you can understand how it feels. First up is the aggression. With Trickster, Swordmaster, and Royal Guard now switchable, you can get close to the enemies without needing to worry. As long as you have a plan, you can deal with them with ease. In the original version, it felt like you were just taking a bit of a gamble. Rolling could help, but if you didn't have Royal Guard or Trickster equipped, you still feel quite limited. Or the other way around. If you do have Royal Guard or Trickster, you won't be able to have the damage that you want to deal. So you would have to be fast or really skilled. But in Freestyle, you have more chances to deal with the enemies. Trust me, if you put this into practice, everything is clear. Now, defense also feels much different. By having Trickster and Royal Guard always available in most situations, you can always feel comfortable at a distance. And it's more than just having Trickster or Royal Guard. Having both gives the player more chances to prepare for an attack, if they want to play it safe and dodge or take a risk in guard. DMC3 base game had issues with this. Your defensive options being rolls and jumps weren't that great. So defense is greatly expanded upon. As you might have guessed, combos also changed because of Freestyle. Not only can you combo whatever you had in the game, you can now just do it. 2 weapons is just too little compared to the amount that the game actually has. So being able to guard, then charge into an enemy, then comboing on them, then seeing other enemies around, so you fall back with Trister, and then continue the combo with guns, makes the game feel so much better. Freedom is in the player's hands at all times. As stupid as this sounds, airtime was a bit of a problem in the original game. As soon as you go up into the air, you come straight back down. There wasn't any room for creativity. Now with so much you can use, the problem is almost no more. Keyword being, this isn't DMC 5 or DMC Devil May Cry where you can just start using airtime right away, but there's a lot more than before, which I think is worth mentioning. The last thing up is range. Now with Gunslinger and Trickster you can deal with enemies at range, which is a great addition. It means I don't have to force myself closer to the enemy because my said kit can't deal with anything at range. So I just think what I've laid out so far gives you a better understanding of the 2 versions of DMC 3, however, I'm not done yet. When I wrote this, I watched a video on DMC. It was about the DMC community doesn't understand character action games. While I liked the message, there is one thing that did stick out to me. So I wanted to add a mini section to this section.
What you're left with is an amazing style selection system, amazing 2 weapons at a time system, amazing complex and deep enemy design designed for efficiency purposes, the best DMD mode, and fantastic gimmicky boss fights. All disliked to an extent by its own fanbase. Amazing style selection. Thank God PC mods fixed that for us, which for the record, mods, what in the entire fuck? Are you even playing Devil May Cry 3 at this point? Amazing 2 weapon system. Thank God mods fixed that, now we have access to all weapons at once when it was never an issue in the first place.
Original versus Freestyle, which is better? To be honest, if you've heard me talk about Freestyle so far, I think you already know my answer. In the video, the guy brought up the fact that you were playing the game wrong if you modded DMC3 with Freestyle. And as someone who has played both versions a lot, I think this is unbelievably stupid. Let's take an example. Say you don't have Trickster and Roll Guard. How do you dodge? Simple. You say roll or jump, and that should be it. As you know, if you played the game more, there are just some attacks you can't just jump or roll out of. So who's at fault here? For a long time we've blamed ourselves for simply choosing a different style, but over time I've realized it's not our fault. It's the game's. If the game doesn't give an attack that you can't roll or jump out of, it is by definition the game's fault. And this isn't me trying to point back at the game and making myself the victim. I think gamers who play DMC3 need to know that it's not their fault in these scenarios. So this is why Freestyle is so important. You need Gunslinger for range, you need Swordmaster for combos, you need Trickster to evade, and you need Roll Guard to block. And notice how I didn't include Quicksilver and Doppelganger. Why? Because they aren't necessary as the main 4. This is why every game after 3 has all 4 of these styles in some way. And that is also why you will never hear a person say we need to go back to having one style in 4, 5 in the reboot. And yes, the reboot plays into this as well. Having an evade and a demon evade, sword moves and gun moves, and notice I didn't talk about this in the same way as the weapons. It's not the same. So now that I've defended the styles, I'll defend the weapons. DMC3 has a lot of enemies that are hard to deal with. DMC3 has bosses who have certain weaknesses. I think you know where I'm going with this. While some bosses can be beaten with one weapon or enemies weak to one weapon, I think it's extremely important that we have all 10 weapons. For example, if you bring Cerberus and Nevin with you against the spiders, you are screwed. If you don't bring Kalina Ann with you to the Arkham fight, you are screwed. The only reason why I'm pointing this out is the importance of weapons playing a key role in the game. Some kits in the original game can be easily countered, but that's not the fault of the player. Carrying 2 melee weapons at a time can leave you with blind spots. But then again, that's not the fault of the player, and that's the game trying to handicap the player even if it damages the overall experience. Each weapon is important. Here's another example. I know you guys are going to totally love this, by the way. If you equip the crowd control weapons, like Nevin and Cerberus, you just can't double jump. So that is now a super weakness. This isn't a hi-fi rush system, this isn't about perks or stats, it's a matter of big build flaws. So to recap, style switching needs to be in the game. Weapon switching also needs to be in the game. Both are because of the weaknesses the builds have that leave the player vulnerable. Again, this isn't the player's fault, and I see one big hole in my argument, and that being the guns. Usually 2 guns are fine, but I still enjoy having all of them, but that's subjective of course. So yeah, Freestyle is better in every way, and isn't even just about combos. I want to close out this section by saying I can't find a single person who has played both versions and wants the original. Okay, if you hear things slam in the background randomly, people are doing things right now. And usually I try to see things like that, and noise gate probably won't be able to help it, but I'm on the last one, the last paragraph, and I do not want to spend forever waiting for them to stop. So we're going to do it anyway, all right? We're going to do it anyway. Here at the Splinter channel, we take things real seriously. No, Daddy. Okay. When you play them back to back, you notice all the things I pointed out. While it may not improve everything about the game, it certainly does a better job than the original, and I get it. Some people who defended the original mode want there to be more kits, like trying a new style out or taking different weapons for different situations. It's cool at first, but over time you need to understand you aren't playing the game right. The fact is that the developers always intended to add style switching, but that wasn't available on the PS2 hardware. And again, I get it. You want to feel unique with your kit, but handicapping the player to 4 weapons and 1 style isn't the path you want to take. I believe in a world where you can choose different kits because of the amount of weapons and styles, or pulling a Hi-Fi Rush and adding mods where there are stats that go up and down. But the original just isn't a good experience, especially because of the new version. Okay, with this video coming to a close, to end this, let's talk about some of the stuff that I think is important but didn't get its own section. Camera. The camera in this game is the worst in the series. This camera loves zooming in on Dante whenever, wherever, for some reason, and I'm playing the game where I want the camera to be far away. At certain times, the camera will fight you. Why? DT explosion. I'm not a fan of overpowered DTs, but in DMC 3 is the worst at this completely. In DMC Devil May Cry, you need to do some stuff to be effective. In DMC 5, Dante, you need to do stuff for Sin DT to be effective. In DMC 3, you just hold down the DT button and just let all the game do the work for you. I'm 90% sure that this is because of DMD being impossible. It's a quick fix to a much bigger problem. The platforming. I've ranted about this already, but I think I need to make clear that platforming in this game is a nightmare. I call this shit Big Dick Randy because it fucks my booty hole up. Air combat. DMC 3 could use a lot more air combat options. I like the moves we have on the ground, but in the air the moveset is just kind of lacking. In Freestyle it's better, but I wish there were, for each weapon, some more stuff in the air. Not just for combo mads, of course, but I think that it's a weak point for certain weapons. Not jumping. Dante and Vergil just can't jump sometimes. Why? The frickety frack I know. Styles leveling up. Now, this is by far one of the most questionable choices the devs made for this game. In DMC 3, the styles' other moves can only be accessed by leveling up said style. This never made any sense to me. In the DMC series, this has never been a thing before or later on. And it's the ultimate question on my mind because it's the only RPG system in 3. So even in 3, it doesn't make any sense. Everything else is either through story, through challenges, or through red orbs. I don't know why you'd want to add something that drags 3 to an absolute halt. If there were more grinding areas or more systems like this, I could understand, but it feels completely wrong in this game in so many ways. Americans thought that DMC 2 was too easy. Alright. Tell me if you've heard this one before. You probably heard this in every DMC 3 video, but let's go over it. When DMC 2 came out, the West complained that it was too easy. So in response, the devs for the Westerners got a hard mode instead of a normal mode, unlike the rest of the world. First off, what the fuck? Second, if the game, DMC 2, doesn't work because on normal difficulties, the enemies literally won't attack you because they're slow, how is that the West's fault? Dog, it's your mistake, not ours. Mashing combos. Yeah. Mashing combos. Please don't do that again. My thumb hurts. S-ranks are annoying sometimes. Finally, the last thing up is the ranking system. DMC judges ranks usually in 3 ways. Time, style, and orbs. In 3, it adds damage to this list. Trying to balance all 4 of these really is irritating. Plus, the items can't be used or else your score goes way down. I get it, it's for stylish players, but this shit is so annoying. I swear to God, every time I try and focus on one, I miss the other one, so I focus on that one, but that, you get the point. It judges you based off of just too many things going at once. I want to live in a world where all 4 of these can be judged separately, like Splinter Cell Blacklist system, where you just simply play how you play and how good you are specifically in that area, and then judge it based off of that. Alright, in this section I'll talk about the stuff I missed and reaffirm my stance on certain issues. I didn't get to talk about the art style in 3 being awful. The tower is really boring. On top of this, every game after and before blows it out of the water. 1 is a classic and has identity. 2, for the most part, sticks to its guns with buildings and complex architecture. 4 and DMC Devil May Cry completely look better with a wide variety in its color palette. And 5 is a bit in trouble with me because everything just turns to purple at certain points, but still looks better than 3. Also, I didn't talk about Lady. Every video I make, I want to talk about stuff I feel passionate towards. The good, the bad, and the mid. Just whatever I think is worth mentioning is something that I can give insight on. But Lady's story and the overall arc with her father is good, and that's as far as I go. It's not because I don't think it's good and I can't give DMC 3 credit. It's just that I really can't explain why it's good, so I hope you can understand. Dante. I wasn't kidding when I said 3 Dante is the Japanese reboot. The character really changes after 3, and the DMC community knows it, they just don't care. Because at the end of the day, most of the older DMC fans now come from 3, not 1. And it's important to remember that. Now, let's talk about something I know you want to hear. He's different, but is he bad? That, my friend, is a good question. The hardest part about it is that he isn't. If this was a bad take on a character, then there would be outcry to be more like the original, but since most are satisfied with him because he is a good character, for the most part, and that's the sad world that we live in. We may never see the sad side of Dante or the internal struggle he had, and the real Dante is just kind of a jumping off point now. There's a lot of people wondering how he could defend DMC Devil May Cry Dante, yet talk about 3 Dante this way. Well, that's because of the fact that 5 and DMC Devil May Cry Dante are rather similar in one big way. They are combinations of what came before, and I hope in the future we get more of that. But at the end, I don't think that the community wants that. They just want to see more action scenes of Dante being crazy.
He was never much deeper than that, and he didn't really need to be.
Shut up. But the combinations of past Dantes is the best we're going to get. As long as we don't have another 4 situation, then I guess I'll live. Level design. Hey Capcom, instead of making the 700 boss with stupid mechanics, how about you put effort into levels? You know, because I don't like going back to the same place over and over again. These areas in DMC 3 made for combat are not made for combat in DMC 3, if you catch my drift. I have to fight the enemies, the stage, and the camera. Yay. Vergil story-wise. Look, like I said on my second channel, there are things to like about 3 Vergil story-wise, but overall, I think the rest of the series did a better job representing them. I guess it's a good introduction to the character, but I feel like the same could be said for Nello Angelo. But the part that actually annoys me is that most of the people that say this say, Vergil isn't a bad guy. He killed at least 100 people, was going to kill many more, and he is not misunderstood for the 300th time. In 3, Vergil is motivated by power, and nothing less. That makes him the same as most of the other villains in the series, even if 3 Vergil does it better. Enemy design. Even if some of the most die-hard fans of DMC have to admit that the enemy design in this game is literal cancer. Enemies that are in walls, enemies that are too fast to hit, enemies you can't hit at all. This shit is annoying. Every time I see the enemies, I speedrun Persona 3ing myself. It's truly awful, and I think the chess enemies show what I mean. They're slow, look bad, little effort put into it, and have nothing that makes any sense, and nothing interesting to interact with. Even when I have everything thanks to Freestyle, I still struggle with these enemies. Not because they're hard, but because they test my patience. And later levels are filled with the worst of the worst. Bayonetta proves that you can have hard enemies and make them work. DMC 3 is nowhere near close to understanding that. Vergil gameplay-wise. After all I said about 3 Vergil gameplay-wise, probably made Dante cry. But I swear, he really is that bad. There are smaller issues about the weapons and the balancing of the character, but the real issue is Vergil's lack of moves. 3 Vergil not only a playable boss, but an unfinished character. He simply needs more to function in a hyper character action complexity that is DMC. This might have been impressive at the time, but here in the Eternal now, he simply doesn't hold up. Styles, weapons, and guns. The moveset in the game is the best in the series in my view. The only thing that could use more work is the air combat. But aside from that, I love the moveset Dante has. Like, 2 styles are just there as a bonus. It's awesome, and it's something I doubt we'll see again. I just wish most of them were DMC weapons in future games. Wish. I can't believe I said it like that. Wish. Sounds almost Japanese, oh my god. Wish. Wish. DMC Remake. I feel quite conflicted on a DMC 3 remake. Hell, I'm even conflicted somewhat about a DMC remake in general. It's very likely the next DMC game will be a remake, but DMC 3 to me really doesn't need a remake. All it needs is Freestyle. Yet, yes, there are things that I don't like about DMC 3, but I don't see how to make it without pissing everybody off. This isn't a Persona 3 scenario where there are two main versions, each with completely different content and strengths. DMC 3 just needs Freestyle on consoles. And look, seeing Dante shirtless in 4K is nice, but we don't need it. The best part about DMC 3 is the moveset. It's the moveset, pure and simple. Just put DLC in the other games. IDK. Maybe my opinion will change over time, but for now... But you know what won't change? Boss fights. I dislike the bosses in this game straight up. I think they are purely inconsistent. 1 second it's a good boss, then you... Get back here, lady! I know I've made this joke before, but where is she going? Is she going to join the protesters at the Capitol at Jan 6? DMC 3 is afraid of being stale. That's why so many bosses in this game are here. It's not their typical formula, they're just throwing shit on the wall and hoping that it sticks. I don't want to talk about this again or I'm gonna have nightmares. Loadouts. I get it. The PS2 couldn't handle it. But man, this version is really held back. Unlike Freestyle. Another thing I want to mention is Freestyle. I see how many people, even as recent on Twitter, that genuinely believe that somehow 3 is better without Freestyle. But, look, I thought the same thing at one point as well. But the reason why I changed is because I actually played Freestyle. I haven't heard a single person that has played the Switch version and goes, wow, I like the original version much better. It just doesn't happen. Every time they say Style isn't playing the real game or whatever, play Style Switch first. If you're going to pretend like you're an expert on the topic, then at least play both versions. Having said that, Freestyle isn't perfect. Some parts feel a bit broken. Again, sometimes. But not being able to switch the weapon order is a bit annoying. Even DMC 5 got this right. I think the whole hold to switch weapons is a bit weird. I've played this game a lot and I'm still not used to it. It's the first time in the series this has been done. But even after all that, Freestyle shouldn't be stuck on the Switch. The only reason I made my purchase for the console was because Bayo 2 and Bayo 3 were also on the Switch. While we're at it, why is DMC Devil May Cry DE not on PC? Why isn't DMC 5 SE not on PC? At least with those two you can, make sense somewhat, but I don't like it, but I can see why it is. But the Switch, there are only 2 DMC games on that console. That's 3, duh, and DMC 1. Fucking 1. They can't even put 2 on there. Oh. I guess DMC 2 was on the Switch. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Please tell Capcom that we aren't stuck in the PS2 days anymore. The Switch itself is porting other Wii U games. Sony is releasing their games to PC, and Xbox is... seem to have given up. Anyway, point being, DMC really needs to be on nearly every platform, and this goes for re-releases. Not because it's better for the world, no. It's for the fact that now I have to listen to a bunch of losers online who cope with that thing saying that they haven't played is worse. It's damaging my mental health. My feelings on DMC 3. Look, it's not a bad game. It really isn't. But man, so many elements feel like they could have been done better before and after the series. It seems that DMC 3 is held to this impossibly high standard that it's near perfect. And please know, it's not close to true, as I've laid out in this entire video. I didn't believe DMC 3 was overrated at first. It took me years to get to this point. I just didn't wake up and go, you know what? Fuck DMC 3. DMC 3 is a fine game and an even better character action game. But man, it really could have been so much better. And I'm tired of pretending it's not, because DMC 3 is overrated. Guess it's finally over. Check out my Combo Mad stuff in the future. Check out my other channels for the shorter content and the story/music related stuff. Join the Discord. Man, this has been, this has taken a lot out of me. Like, a lot. This is definitely the biggest video I've made in a while, so Yeah, I don't know when part 2 is coming out, but I will be working on other stuff in the background, just not as consistent, but enjoy my combo mads in the meantime and the other content. Alright, this has been Splinter3303, and I'm your daddy. Kind of a weird way to end a big video, but you know.